Saturday, everybody, and welcome to the WREC. It's the European bracket that we're taking a look at today, and we have some fantastic series. After yesterday, we saw Team Dark and Na'Vi duke it out across 3 games. Na'Vi would ultimately take the win, but game 1 looked really shaky from them. Basically an ARAM for 20 minutes. We had a mid-tower up at 20 minutes into the game, and Na'Vi would fall. Game 3, we jump all the way forward in that series, and finally they would steady the ship against Team Dark's Ashe Seraphine comp that we saw last week. But Na'Vi had found their form, and from this Varus performance, Hydro looking insanely strong throughout that lower bracket. They advanced, and it was our second series of the day between Team Queso and Zero Zone. We thought perhaps it might be close as well, but Team Queso just on another level, looking incredibly good. Methanauts, Rakan earning MVP of the series, just with the engages again and again, landing those fights exactly as Team Queso needed to do to advance through the lower bracket. We go from the lower bracket to the upper bracket today. We have 4 Titans taking to the Rift. Let's get the WREC on the road.
Welcome to the official Riot Games Vibrant EMEA Championship.
Everybody round here know we getting hype. Everybody round.
Welcome everybody to the Wild Rift EMEA Championships. I am Stress, joined once again by Hell's Devil and Stuart for our games today. I think we're all excited for these games. Like, we're finally into the semi-finals of the upper bracket. Stuart, there are 4 Titans taken to the Rift. I won't put you on the spot and ask for a prediction on our series yet, but come on, this is like potentially our best day of games so far.
100%. 2 of these teams are going to go through to that upper bracket final. Both games are going to be really, really close as well. It's hard to predict, but I think our predictions will see a little bit later on that most of us are in the same sort of bracket.
Let's take a look at the bracket just to see how our teams have got here, because we've now had 4.5 weeks basically of competition to work through. And you see, we started with 16 teams, whittling our way down. We still have 6 remaining, 4 in the upper bracket, 2 in the lower bracket. Hells, when we look at our lower bracket teams, of course, we saw yesterday Na'Vi and Queso advance. There are some dream matchups here when you look at the likes of the teams playing today. Are there any teams that you think are going to find themselves in the mix down there with Na'Vi and Team Queso?
So we have like the 2 big Titans playing today, which is Gamelord and WREC, and then we have the underdogs. I hate to say it like that, but ViV Esports and Formulation Gaming, right? Like, I'm hoping to see one of the Titans in the loser bracket, right? Because I really love seeing those underdog wins. I love it, but I don't think it's gonna happen because I personally feel Gamelord and WREC are like on another level, and then I feel Queso is on that level as well, and they're in the lower losers bracket, right? But it's just gonna be very interesting to see who's gonna land there. I think it's gonna be the underdogs, but I hope not.
Well, that's the interesting thing, is one of them is going to end up down there at some point, because we only have 1 team going to Barcelona from this bracket. Somebody's going to have to drop down to the lower bracket. You saw our schedule for the day, starting off the day with ViV against Gamelord. Then we go into our second series, which is going to be WREC versus Formulation. And you can see our predictions that we put forward. I'm the only one breaking the mold, because I love Formulation's play style when I watch them play. I think I've seen WREC falter from time to time. I don't know whether either of you have strong opinions on me going against the grain on WREC versus Formulation, but I think they can do it. I think they can pull it out.
It feels like my sort of prediction with Zero Zone yesterday. Like, your gut feeling is like, come on, you could do it. But I think, most of us voted for Gamelord. Well, all of us voted for Gamelord. But you're the only one that wanted to be a little bit different, Stress. But we'll have to. I was right
last time. I did this. And you know what? I'm going to show you my power now when you disagree with me. Get out here, Stuart. Go, leave. Like, I'll speak to you later. Like, leave the show. See, look, don't disagree with me. I'll kick you out of here instantly. So, so we've got a few moments just to jump into some of our main topics coming out of yesterday. And I think, we discussed a lot about the bottom lane in general throughout the day, but I think Rakan really was the champion that surprised us, coming out all the way to first pickable.
I mean, definitely. Like, we saw Rakan being picked in the beginning already, but in the beginning, I feel teams weren't really showing what they were made of, right? Like, because in the beginning, we had all these 2-0s. Some of these teams were so confident, and not everyone was picking the Rakan, but I feel now Rakan is going to be the same tier as Fiora. 100% pick and ban, because now we're getting into these more important matches, right? Like, we have the 6 best teams right now, and I feel Rakan is going to be picked every single game. There is just so many combos that you can do with it. This champion just provides so much utility to the team. The roaming, the ganking, the team fighting, everything. He has it all. So definitely top priority pick right now, Stress.
Yeah, especially as you mentioned, pairing with the Ziggs, like the damage that comes out. And we saw it to great effect with Team Queso's Methanaut earning that MVP over their win. When you look at the way that Team Queso won yesterday, that did mean we said goodbye to Zero Zone from that series. And saying goodbye to teams is never easy. I think Zero Zone, I think it is hard when you look at a team like Team Queso, how strong they were. But on the other side, Team Dark, I just feel like they never really got going to the point where of our expectations. We had high expectations for Team Dark.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest with you. As I said yesterday, like, sure, they lost, but I still feel like it was a mini win because they lost 2-1, right? They actually gave Na'Vi a really hard time, and I just feel like they really need a bit more practice with their macro game, with their drafting, because the players are incredibly good. They really showed what they were made of in that first game, right? So even though they lost, I feel like, you know, if they do a little bit more practice, they may end up a bit higher in next time. Like, I feel there is potential in that team, Swiss.
Yeah, of course, they'll have an opportunity through the last chance qualifier. I must admit, when we heard Mario a couple of times in interviews, they were talking about the way that they scrim and some of the things that they scrim, and you know, they had different strategies. I would love to, as you said, kind of like see how they refine their practice heading towards last chance qualifier, and I think they can contend even with some of the top teams. So it's certainly not the end of the road for Zero Zone and Team Dark. We will likely see them in a couple of weeks' time. From yesterday's games to one of the most pivotal moments so far in the tournament, and it's probably the moment that's had us talking as casters for the longest time. We want to take a look back at last week's series between Control and Zero Zone with Stuart, with a segment of Smart Stuart.
Thank you very much, Jess. We are indeed looking back at Zero Zone versus Control. In this series, Control were 1-0 up, and they just won a team fight as well, and they're looking to try and push down the Nexus. But in this clip, sometimes you'll realize that sometimes it's not best to go for the Nexus. Sometimes it's best to play a little bit more passive and go and just control the game and make sure you take the objectives instead. So as we roll this clip out, you can see that there's 2 Control members in the bot side, and they're looking to try and end the game. They're going to go to the mid because you can see that there's a mid wave pushing down. So they're going to try and finish off the game in this instance. You can see E-Man uses a satchel charge. Unfortunately, mistimes it ever so slightly, which can be a pivotal moment in this. And as the minion wave gets pushed in, I want you to notice the Nexus. The Nexus is going to be golden because Control took 2 towers. This is what we call the backdoor bonus. This means that the Nexus is going to take reduced damage, but also deal damage as well, or deal more damage as well at the same time. And as we play this clip in slow motion, you can see that E-Man throws out his Mega Inferno Bomb, and he will take tower aggro. So that means that he will go down. After that, Ryder Zito uses his Body Slam. He will take tower aggro. Komoto takes tower aggro as well, and Patterson is able to defend the Nexus in a 1 versus 4 situation. And after this, Zero Zone were able to take the Baron, take this team fight, and end the game, and actually end the series as well 2-1. So that's it for Smartshoot for this week. Back to Stress and Hells to get us closer to game number 1.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I've got to admit, I think that was the first time we've actually seen that really in action and have an impact on the game, like that, the backdoor protection on the Nexus, like to the point where I was like, really? That exists? So rarely you see it kick in. But for me, I'm like, you were 1,000 health on the Nexus and everybody starts attacking the Camille. Most pivotal moment, I think, for any team, because unfortunately for Control, it sealed their fate into the lower bracket, and then we saw Control lose. So it's been a rough road for them again. They're another team that we're expecting to see in the last chance qualifier, because you know, you and I, Hells, we really enjoy the way that Control play. Like, they're one of our most favorite teams to watch.
Yeah, and I gotta say, you know, a bit biased because I have some really good friends in that team. And the way that they lost is probably the worst way that you can lose. So I really hope that they can get back, right? Because the mental game, it sucks. It just sucks to lose like that because they were winning. They were about to get the Nexus. And I feel like it was also a surprise to them, maybe, the golden Nexus, because I feel like they didn't know that that was going to be coming, right? They kind of ignored it. They were like, yeah, we can just finish anyways. And then they just screwed up, as Stuart mentioned during his segment. E-Man hitting the Camille, dying like that, and leaving the Nexus at such a low amount of HP. Oh, that just hurts a lot, Stress.
Yeah, it makes for good entertainment for us and the viewers, but as a player, that must be tragic to be in that situation. We do need to switch gears a little bit, though, because we are getting close to our first series of the day. This is our first semi-final of the WREC. Of course, this is a two-bracket system, so there'll be semifinals, then an upper bracket final, and then all the way at the end of the competition will be a grand final. So we're not determining who's in the absolute finals yet, but it absolutely helps to be still in the upper bracket. So let's take a look at our first two teams. It's ViV going up against Gamelord. A real underdog against Titan story in this one, because ViV, we've seen them previously in this year known as Free Team. It's Millip, Tyra's, Sharks, Krenix, and Flower. Lonely Kids, Zefta, Ruiz, Redemption, and Hester for Gamelord. And I mean, there are so many big names on here. I know that Krenix, of course, a former WREC player. We've mentioned that a number of times. But I mean, I think that's one of the areas that ViV maybe could look to activate into the game, because while Redemption and Hester are good, I think like Krenix may very well be a strength for ViV in my mind.
Yeah, definitely. And what I want to point out as well is they've swapped out the support, which used to be Ryu, which was an incredibly good player, by the way. And I know that he's a substitute. He's told me like he doesn't want to commit fully to the team, but he was this good already. And now they've put a new support named Fleur in. How good is this guy going to be, right? Like, how good is this guy going to be if you substitute Ryu out for him? And then indeed, combined with Krenix, I feel like ViV Esports bot lane is going to be incredibly powerful. And that's what our eyes are going to be put on.
Yeah, I was really impressed by both Ryu and Flower when we saw them kind of week 1 and 2. We saw a bunch of ViV. It has been a little while since we've seen these teams, so you know, we'll have to see what their practice actually comes back and shows, because the meta's shifted just a little bit, and I want to see where Redemption and Hester can find themselves in that bottom lane. I think we can't underestimate how good Gamelord are, even though this week I think at times they looked a little bit shaky in the Purge tournament. And maybe to hear a little bit more about somebody who was casting all of those games, Stuart, what are your key points for this series between ViV and Gamelord?
Yes, Stress. I think you and Hells mentioned it already. The battle of the AD carries down in duo lane. Redemption versus Krenix is going to be such a crucial moment, I think, in this series. We're going to see a high priority on Corki because Redemption is very comfortable on Corki. And actually during this week as well, Krenix has been playing a lot of Vayne. So don't be surprised to see maybe a Vayne or two in this series. And then we're going on to the supports as well. At the start of the day, both Stress and Hells mentioned about Rakan and engaged supports. Heste is one of the best engaged supports in the game, and Flower's not too bad either as well. So making sure that the Rakan priority is there as well. And sometimes Flower likes to go back to the Janna with the Vayne in the duo lane as well. And then we talk about advantage to Gamelord. They did play against each other during this week. Gamelord did win 2-1, but it was a very, very close series. So let's take a look and see if history repeats itself. Back to Stress and Hells to get us into game number 1.
That is my favorite thing about the teams playing each other earlier in this week, is now you're like, was anybody saving a strat? Because with all respect to the competition that happened in the week, of course, there was an open qualifier, sorry, I should say last chance qualifier spot on the line. Obviously, everybody wants to be getting to Barcelona, right? So if you're in an upper bracket matchup and you know you're going to be facing your opponents this weekend, you may very well just save a few things for that and wait to bust it out today. So I'm looking forward to our first draft of the day and seeing where we're going to go. I think, you know, that Rakan for Hester is an absolute priority for Gamelord. We'll see whether they end up on the blue side or the red side. I believe they'll be starting on the red side for game number 1. That is the case. We're into the first draft, ViV versus Gamelord. We're going to see Yuumi priority. We're going to see Fiora priority. Ziggs and Rakan have a lot of focus here in Europe as well.
Exactly as Stress just said, yeah, like we can expect those bans. And as you said as well, the Corki ban, right? Like not all of the teams like the Corki a lot. We've seen Corki, I believe Corki has a 100% pick and ban rate in NA. And in EU with some of the teams, it's the same basically. As you said,
Right.
Redemption, for example, he really loves that Corki. And indeed, ViV Esports doesn't want to deal with that. They just ban it out. And we're seeing some bans that we always see as well. Olaf, we can expect the Fiora, we can expect the Rakan, the Ziggs. These are probably all champions that are going to have a lot of priority within these teams. Stress.
Yeah, it's funny about the Olaf. Yesterday we saw Vex from Na'Vi actually struggle on the Olaf to get into the fights. I think the composition let him down a little bit. There's the Rakan ban that we were talking about, and I'll give the credit. You were giving me the credit. I'll give the credit to Stuart for that Corki ban on the Redemption. He's the one that's had his eyes on those games fixed on multiple, and they're the vein. I mean, Stuart couldn't have set this up any better. I mean, Smart Stuart was about macro, but he's apparently like nailing this draft before we ever get into it. So that is going to leave a few other picks available, right? That's going to leave Ziggs for now up. Fiora is up. Camille will be up. Jace will be up. Set will be up. Darius will be up. Garen will be up. Gragas will be up. Like, there's a lot of picks still available is what I'm trying to get to. Like all of those I wouldn't be surprised to see picked in some kind of way through this first rotation of the draft.
Yeah, and it seems like not only Stuart did his homework on ViV Esports, Gamelord did it equally as well by banning out that Vayne indeed, because we don't see a lot of Vayne bans. It's definitely a target ban, because even though Vayne is one of the best champions in solo queue, right, and in duo queue, in competitive it can be a little hard because Vayne doesn't have the range, Vayne doesn't have the ability to push out waves as fast, and she needs to scale into the late game. But ViV Esports had practiced it a lot, and that's why Gamelord banned it out. So even though Galio is banned, we are still seeing some priority on the Camille. Lee Sin is still open, however, and we know how dangerous Zefta can be on the Lee Sin Stress.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is kind of like what I would coin as a bruiser trap in the draft here. When we've got a Varus ban and a Corki ban, Ziggs shoots up in priority right now when you look at it for Gamelord. Like if you take the Ziggs here and force ViV onto something a little different, that could be a way that you kind of picked up that bot lane carry and you've in one way won the draft, at least on the bottom half of the map for now. It's going to be the Gragas. We know it flexes on red side incredibly well. There's basically 4 roles that it can go to, so not too surprising to see that. I mean, in Wild Rift, I wouldn't even be surprised to see somebody try and force it into a bot lane carry, but we'll do that if ever it gets there. Fiora is the pickup, likely going to Zefta, but it could be Lonely Kid as well.
Yeah, and these are some very big power picks on Gamelord. And the beauty is as well, we love seeing that Gragas first pick, because as Stress mentioned, you can play it anywhere. But same with Fiora, you can play it in the jungle, you can play it in the Baron lane. You can even pull off a mid lane Fiora if you want to, but basically, ViV Esports doesn't know what they're up against. And right here, ViV Esports actually picks up the power pick Ziggs. And I want to say, Ziggs Camille is a beautiful combination. And the reason is because of Camille's Hextech ultimatum. When Camille engages with her ultimate, Ziggs can throw his ultimate right on top of it. Obviously, we're going to have the problem of the stasis enchants. And we talked about this before. Like, stasis is such a broken enchantment. But like, that's basically the whole counter that Gamelord needs against that combination of ViV Esports. But still, you have an amazing combo in your team. Is Gamelord going to be able to deal with that? Now,
good question. I've just noticed Yumi's up. I mean, not necessarily for this rotation of the draft here. That's an Orianna. This is something that you were talking about before the broadcast, actually. You're a big fan of Orianna, and I'll definitely give you some time to talk about it in-game, but of course picks up that bottom lane carry alongside it. Now we go to the second phase of the draft. Supports, neither team has really picked one up. Gragas could be down there. We, of course, have seen the Rakan banned out. A lot still available, though.
Yeah, as I said, like, I love the Orianna pick, and I feel Orianna is one of those champions that you can pick to counter out the Ziggs, because even though Orianna doesn't have quite as much range, she can out-damage Ziggs, basically. She has the damage also in the late game. Like, she's one of the only champions, you know, we mentioned Varus can do the same with the poking, but Orianna can do it as well. She can poke right back at the Ziggs and do an insane amount of damage. Now, it seems like Gamelord is betting out the Janna, so Gamelord is expecting an ADC, attack damage carry, to come through from ViV Esports, because we've seen Chronix, right? Like, he loves the Kai'Sa, he loves playing Vayne, he loves playing the traditional ADCs as opposed to the Ziggs. So I feel that ViV Esports may put the Ziggs in the mid lane and still pick out an ADC for Chronix. But as you said, Yuumi being banned away as well. So both teams are still expecting ADCs to come through, even though they've picked the Orianna and the Ziggs.
I think from Viv's side of things, maybe they also saw Vex's Gragas with, I think it was Vex, with the Yuumi on it already, that just like one-shot people from the jungle role. That's another opportunity with that AP. Jack's banned out away here. That's to hit the jungle pool a little bit from Viv. noticing with both of these supports and some of the other bands, like there's also disengage being taken out. Like Janna is one of those great disengage champions, and when you get jumped on, you can push people away. I don't really see where that was going from Gamelord's side of things, because if anything, when you're running an Orianna, it kind of helps to have some of that disengage as well, because she struggles if she has no flash, and for instance, a Camille jumps on her.
Yeah, and Orianna also does pretty well into a Janna. I just don't quite understand why Gamelord banned out the Janna. I feel that it may just be a power pick from Fluor perhaps, but I don't understand it personally because, as we said, right, like Gamelord could have used the Janna potentially, but
now you're saying that. Now you're saying that, I'm having flashbacks to, I think it was week 2 when Fluor was setting up engages with, I think it was Zefto or Lonely Kids Gragas, where it was like the Janna tornado into the Gragas flash, and it was super, super strong. That may very well have been Shargs. I know it was one of these two teams were actually playing that. Yeah, of course it would be on that side of the map is ViV. That game was a really impressive performance between Janna and Gragas, so no surprises now that I've thought about it a little bit more. ViV will take the Vi. So again, this is everything about getting onto the Orianna or potentially even the Fiora the later the game goes if you need to lock her down, even though she will have that riposte.
Yeah, definitely. Vi, I love that pick because it's a single target champion. She does a lot of single target damage. And with the Garen, and now they picked the Braum up as well. But then with the Garen, with that Camille Ziggs combination that we have, basically ViV Esports is looking to blow up one champion from Gamelord instantly with that combination, instantly. Because Vi Ziggs is also a good combination, right? You ult with Vi and then you throw the Ziggs bomb. And it's going to be interesting to see what Gamelord is going to be picking to counter this. And indeed, the Janna would have been pretty good here to take away a champion, but they go for the Zed, and I was talking about this. I love to see the Zed. This is just this is a crowd favorite, right? And the reason they picked Zed right here is because Zed can dive on the Ziggs, and I feel that Gamelord has done an amazing job countering out that Ziggs, because even though Ziggs is a really good power pick, the champions that Gamelord have really like enables their composition and allow them to counter that Ziggs, right? Gragas with the ultimate, Fiora with the engage, Orianna with the counter damage, Zed with the engage. Just they have it all, Stress.
Yeah, the Gamelord have brought a lot of options here. That's the way that you kind of work around a single damage focus from ViV, where it's just like, okay, we blow up one person. Well, now you bring a second threat, right? You put the threat onto the carry from ViV. So Kranix's Ziggs is going to be under a lot of threat for the majority of this game, and he may not have a whole lot of frontline. It's only really going to be Fluor that's there in order to keep him safe. So early Stasis Buyer is going to have to come out in this game from Kranix in order to shut down Ruiz on this end. And I mean, it's Ruiz. Saying it there, I don't know how I didn't pick up on it earlier. Like, Ruiz has played this champion so many times when we look at the competitive history of last year. It's one of those picks that we come to expect from Ruiz. So I would say, like, Gamelord have a lot of tools here to really punish ViV if ViV can't get those engages to start for them correctly. And then there's a Fiora. There's always a bit of a wild card that if Fiora gets ahead, I wouldn't be surprised to see them run away with it.
Yeah, I definitely feel that Gamelord won this draft, and they've just done such a good job counter-picking the composition of ViV Esports. And it's going to be very interesting to see how ViV Esports is going to keep that Ziggs safe, because their whole composition kind of revolves around the Ziggs, because they have a lot of bruisers, they have a lot of engage, but the big sustained damage, and the burst damage is going to be coming through from the Ziggs. So indeed, it's going to be very interesting to see how they're going to be able to save out that Ziggs in this game.
Wow, Ruiz, that's some confidence right there. Walks right into a spinning Garen and a Braum. I was going to say that the lane matchups, I feel like probably are not that easy for Ruiz, regardless of which one it was, whether it was Camille or Garen. So, like, I don't expect Ruiz to be getting kills in this lane, and it might be a struggle to push out early on. However, he's going to be able to match a little bit of that roaming that Shargs is trying to do early on. The votes in chat, unsurprisingly, going towards Gamelord. I think, we've picked up Gamelord quite a lot over the last few weeks of how strong they've been and how impressive. Shargs actually drops low. I might just be completely wrong about this. Those electrocute changes have made Zed that little bit more potent.
Yeah, definitely. The thing is, though, as you said, right, like Garen and Camille all do really well into Zed, but Ruiz didn't pick Zed to win his lane. Ruiz just picked the Zed to assassinate Kranix, right? And we both know that. And but I still feel it's a smart pick, even though he's probably going to be struggling in the lane. Even though Zed is still quite powerful because he's up against a Garen, it's still going to be a worthy pick because he can pretty much. He doesn't really care about the Braum because he's Zed. He can just dive right behind the Braum. And then he's going to go on the Ziggs. And I feel that's the whole point of it. So it's going to be interesting to see how Ruiz is going to play out his lane. And if he's going to be able to actually out-rotate the Garen as well. Because Garen has some very good wave clear too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just stands in the wave, spins, and then like he'll get a bunch of movement speed running to the other lane, depending on how he uses his abilities. I like this roam from Ruiz, though. This is good timing because they actually forced Flower out of lane for quite a while. When I say forced, Flower was able to roam towards middle lane. So Gamelord are just poking. They're like, oh, is there an engage on in bottom lane? Okay, no, we have to back away. But they do get some vision control on the back of that red buff. So it's going to be able to spot Tyraz out. Tyraz hasn't shown his face basically this entire game so far.
Yeah, and if we look at Tyraz, actually, he's already 400 gold ahead. He's now going for the gank because what Tyraz did is he just cleared out the entire jungle, got level 5, and he's going to go for the gank here.
Yeah, here comes the ultimate. Very early timing as Lonely Kid forced to flash into the bush. Going to try and juke his way out. Zed ultimate's going to come through. Tyraz should be able to survive through that one, no problem. Really well played. Power farming through the jungle, make it work with that first gank.
And I absolutely love how Tyraz did that because he just kind of ignored the game. He got to level 5, then he did a sneaky little gank in the Baron lane, and the timing was just perfect. Milup went for the engage, and I want to highlight how good this was, by the way, because Milup went for a losing fight. He purposely went for a losing fight. So Lonely Kid thought, yeah, that's a free kill, but then Milup flashed away and at like 5% HP, and then of course Tyraz with the Vi ultimate destroyed Lonely Kid right there. He was even able to force out the flash, and right now Tyraz is ahead by a lot. He's even going for the conditioning room. So getting that early game advantage, and he's going to be tanky in the late game as well, is going to be really, really big for ViV Esports right there. As we can see, 600 gold ahead already, and honestly, look, the game is starting to look pretty good for ViV Esports right now, Stress.
Yeah, ViV even quicker on the rotation here. They knew that they had the timing to get Ziggs back and then into middle lane now before Orianna ever will be able to recall. That's the kind of engage out of Milup that's only really going to work once in this series, but it's already had the effect that it does. I really feel like Lonely Kid's like, why the hell is he engaging into me? And then you go, oh no, wait, we haven't seen Vi. She's level 5 and she's already ulting you out of the bush. Like, I don't think in game 2 or game 3 the same thing is going to happen, but that is absolutely what ViV needed to do to start this off. We hadn't mentioned really that it was Lonely Kid on that Fiora as opposed to the Gragas. So trying to shut down that carry out of the Baron lane, I think is a worthwhile time investment there as well, because Lonely Kid on Fiora can be devastating in the late game. And if they can put him behind early on, that's a great start.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to say Tyraz can get a Trinity Force right now if he goes back. But he decides to actually stick with the Infernal Dragon, which I personally don't really like. I feel like ViV Esports would have done a bit better if they stalled a little bit, but it seems like they're just going to get it for free, actually, because Milup is defending the Rift Herald, and I don't think he's going to be able to. But if he's going to be able to, then this is going to be huge stress.
Yeah, they're going to try and steal it with the Ziggs ult. Can't quite get there, although they are closing the distance quite quickly here. Milup goes in, doesn't quite get it on the steal, but he's bought time with that Hextech ultimatum to try and lock him in place. Can't quite find the rest of the crowd control, but I mean, Milup is doing a really good job of at least like trying to keep Gamelord on the hook. In goes the Assault and Battery under the tower. Now Tyraz might be thinking second about this. Blast Cone out. Ooh, didn't get him over the wall. That's actually kind of devastating, but Ruiz was there anyway if he'd have picked it up. I think it ends up being the right call here from Tyraz, just able to sneak away. So Dragon went over to ViV, Rift Herald went over to Gamelord. No other kills really followed.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel that ViV Esports could have gotten a bit more out of it by trying to force a 5 versus 5. Because if they had just wasted a little bit of time, as I said, Tyraz had enough gold to get that Trinity Force, which is a huge power spike, by the way. So even though this is fine for ViV Esports, we can actually see that Gamelord came out on top because of this. They actually closed out the gold gap. And right now, Tyraz wasn't actually able to utilize his early game power spike that he got. Because if he had gone back, he would have gotten the Trinity Force, and Gragas would have not have had a single item yet. So even though this is fine, they have the Infernal Dragon. I feel that ViV Esports could have gotten a little more out of that stress.
Yeah, it's pretty significant that that gold gap has closed. I mean, Vi is one of those champions that towards the end of the game really is reduced to just her ultimate being the usefulness. Whereas like Gragas, he has a flash body slam, he has the ultimate himself, like he's very, very like quick to get fight started or even disengage. Vi can only engage. She doesn't really do anything else. So if they can't find the engages onto Redemption, who I imagine will be picking up stasis fairly quickly in this game in the same way that Krenix will, like suddenly you're going to run out of targets or at least viable options to get yourself into the fight.
And we see that Chronix is going for the Luden's Echo, which is a really solid first item. But what I personally want to see from Chronix is an Archangel Staff, which goes into the Seraph's Embrace, because the composition that he's playing against is a hardcore diving composition. We talked about it during the draft, right? It's basically a composition that says, kill Ziggs. So Ziggs is obviously going to need a Stasis Enchant, but then also a defensive item like the Archangel Staff would do really well. And we can see that Redemption on the Orianna has actually already picked up the Archangel Staff. And this is a bit of a better item on Orianna. He actually also went for the Stasis, by the way. So
immediately
really going for a defensive build right there.
And that's exactly it. As soon as Vi hits the next ultimate, if Tyrus hasn't checked the items, that's going to put Vi right into the fight and they'll get nothing from it. Like the Orianna will just stasis, flash away, has the exhaust, like a lot of safety on this Orianna that we will talk about throughout this game. Gamelord going to try and land that Aqua Prism. They do, and there's a great tidal. I was going to say great tidal wave. It was a great barrier to actually block it. And that's one of the strengths of Braum into that tidal wave from Nami is he just does so much work, saying no more waves. I have got the perfect flood defenses.
Yeah, we saw it yesterday, right? The Braum blocking out, Xiao and Braum blocking out the Seraphine engage, but we have another engage!
Can't block that one. Rift Herald's going to charge as well. They pick up a kill, pick up the first turret of the game, and this is the problem is Gamelord, I think their composition is now in that stage where it does really well at deflecting what ViV want to do.
And I really love how Redemption basically went for the combo that you talked about. I don't remember if you mentioned it on the broadcast, but basically Stasis Enchant and the exhaust. And to top it off as well, he has that Archangel Staff as well, which builds into the Seraph's Embrace. So if anyone gets Redemption at a low amount of HP, he still gets that bonus shielding. So how the hell are you going to kill Redemption right now from ViV Esports side?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to kind of key some of the viewers in there, perhaps, because it was an off-broadcast discussion that we were having. So we were talking about the strengths of Orianna, how she has a shield, she has mobility, she has crowd control, big damage. If you take exhaust and then stasis, as long as you have your flash available, you can play with this confidence that no one can kill you. And as long as you understand where you can take fights and where you are too far extended, she's a really difficult champion to punish in general. And that's what Redemption is doing very well in this game. He's 0 deaths now. I hope I haven't cursed him on this game, but generally Orianna is a pretty hard champion to kill.
I'm looking at something else right now, which is really, I cannot believe that it's being built right now, which is Heste. He has a Luden's Echo on the Nami stress. He has a Luden's Echo. Now, this is what I call aggression, because never mind. The obvious call would be to go for the Staff of Flowing Waters on Nami, right? It's really good to pair up with the Orianna, but he actually is like, screw it, I'm gonna carry myself.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to bring... I don't know too much about that. I'm just going to leave that and see how the Nami actually does. Credit to Zefta, because when that Ziggs ultimate appears, I think most people panic and try and rush down the objective. Whereas Zefta's like, there's no way it's going to do 1,000 damage right now. I'll just hold, I'll let the damage go and smite it after. Like, so many people would panic in that situation that Zefta knows exactly what he's got to do.
Yeah, definitely. That's the experience that comes with playing Wilder Fight. Zefta knows exactly right now Ziggs cannot steal it. I'm just going to wait and I'm going to get it. And Gamelord doesn't really mind ViV Esports getting the Dragons because they're going for the Rift Heralds. Although they've only really gotten a Baron lane turret out of it. And I feel the next Rift Herald is going to be put in the mid lane. We've seen in previous games how important the mid lane is, but here they're going to be going for Ruiz.
Yeah, Ruiz can't defend this tower alone, and now Ziggs has already got back into that middle lane. Chronix's ultimate is back available once again. Zefta's going to try and rush this down. They need to put about 500 damage down onto this tower. With Braum there, that's going to be really difficult. That's the one thing about Orianna is the shockwave does come out, is she is low range. She can't really punish here, and that's actually going to be Lonely Kid jumping forward, overextension potentially, as they haven't been able to get that tower. They've thrown everything at it, and here's the damage down. They forced Redemption to flash away. He's used the exhaust. He's used everything that he's got to defend, and that means now Sharks can get into the back line, but he's dropping low as well. Redemption ever so close to dying, and all of the defensive tools used. 300 health on that mid lane tower. Ziggs still stands as Chronix can clear the waves, and I think Gamelord probably have to reset here, back away, and try this play again in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, and I just mentioned it. Gamelord is very likely going to go for the mid lane turret, but that was not the play right there, because as we look into the replay, they put the Rift Herald on the mid lane turret while there is a Braum defending. Braum with a beautiful ultimate right there, and Lonely Kid just getting caught like that. Easily dies, and this is just not the engage that Gamelord was looking for. They should have waited a little longer, because now they don't even have the mid lane turret, and they wasted the Rift Herald, and we shouldn't forget that they gave away 2 dragons for this stress. They gave away 2 dragons just to be able to get 1 Baron lane turret, by the way. And ViV Esports has gotten that Dragon lane turret as well. So I feel that like they've kind of screwed up right there. Like sure, it was a good call to go for the Rift Herald, but they don't even have the mid lane turret. And if you have these champions like Ziggs and Orianna, the mid lane turret is going to be very important because Ziggs can basically stand under the turret and keep throwing those bombs. Same story with Orianna, so right here they don't have an advantage.
Blue buff pass over as well, over to Ziggs. Now they're going to try and get towards the top lane as Ruiz is going to be forced to flash away as the Mega Inferno Bomb came out. Is that an opening now for Zefta to try and push mid lane? I don't think so, because Ziggs is right there. And this is why we talked about Ziggs coming back into the European meta. Why he's back with a boom is it's so hard to move him out of this middle lane that ViV know that they have control over this entire middle section of the river, or at least they're not threatened. One thing I think that ViV do have a problem with is they're not able to push out too far in their lanes, and they haven't taken mid lane tower either. So for ViV, it's going to be a bit of an odd game, and trying to find picks on Redemption or even on the side lane as this Lonely Kid now going aggressive against Sharks. Sharks is going to have to back away with that tower still up. He has the safety there. I feel like this game may slow down in a couple of seconds time because it's kind of hard to actually make these plays work. The rest of ViV are coming down towards the bottom lane. That's a good Nami ult. That extra AP helping out a little bit there as Gamelord pick up a kill.
That was insane. They just destroyed Tyrus right there. Tyrus really struggling on the Vi. He did good in the beginning, but now he's really starting to struggle with the Vi because he's just constantly getting caught out by Zefta's ultimate and other abilities like that. And I'm honestly curious what Miloop decided to build because I feel like he may have a dead stance.
Double stasis party in the top lane as Miloop is having to back himself away. Ruiz had to stasis there. Yeah, I mean, Tyrus, we mentioned a little bit on this Vi, is like, especially when you go to Trinity Force, you're looking for that single target kill, and then hopefully the rest of the team can do enough. You don't have the tankiness to really survive if you end up in the middle of everybody else, at least not on 2 items. But Redemption, his flash is back available, his exhaust is up, his stasis is as well, I believe. Ziggs ultimate comes through. Once again, it's a little bit early, but they're trying to contest this objective. Flash out from Nami, but Gamelord just back themselves away again. If ViV can force mid here, this might be worth it for them.
This might be worth it for them indeed. Gamelord did get a dragon, but here ViV should be getting the turret.
Tyrus flashed in, did not commit the ultimate as they know that Zed would just shadow away. The tower falls, that's a big pickup for ViV. Explosive Cask is going to knock ViV away. I think it was an attempt at an engage, but Gamelord don't quite find it.
So even though Gamelord has a really good late game composition, they got the dragon and everything like that. ViV Esports did get that mid lane tower, which is proven worthy. Ooh, never mind, he doesn't go for the full engage, but it has proven worthy a lot because right now ViV Esports can push away Gamelord, and Gamelord basically cannot run away. If they run away, they have to go all the way to the tier 2 turret. So this is a massive advantage for ViV Esports.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. I mean, they're just going to tank it up and go for it while Ziggs is nowhere near. Even without the minions, they're going to be able to take that opportunity. That's smart from Gamelord in the sense of like, you have to break that tower, otherwise you end up in a real tough situation. This is basically a game of Ruiz trying to put damage down and bait out Kranek's like stasis and some of the defensive capabilities in the same way that Tyrus is trying to do it from Redemption, and neither of them are likely to get any kills. The thing about that is Ruiz can still do a lot of damage, whereas Vi has to actually kind of like take a one-way trip into a fight, and typically that's something that Tyrus is going to regret if he ends up in a situation where he's taking damage from multiple members of Gamelord.
Yeah, definitely. And just like Redemption, Chronix also has that exhaust for the same reason. If Zed goes on him, he uses the exhaust. By the way, quickly that I want to mention, Zefta has 3 items right now.
Well, that makes him a pretty powerful spot, but that's a good first pick-off for this fight. Lonely Kid is still down towards the bottom lane. Are they actually going to turn to this Baron? I don't know that they can contest it, as Sharks is going bottom lane. So ViV don't get much more than 1 pick from it. It's good and they get vision control, but it's not a game-breaking pick-off for them.
Definitely, also because they use 3 ultimates to just kill away Heste. Gamelord still has all of their ultimates available, so indeed, you just cannot engage as ViV Esports. And as I said, Ziggs is going for the Seraph's Embrace, but he doesn't have it quite yet. And if we look at Orianna's build, actually, she has 3 items already, including a Rabadon's Death Cap and a Void Staff, and that is huge stress. This is huge. Gamelord has a lot of damage up in their arsenal right now.
Yeah, I think the one thing that is going to show its potency is if you get that multi-person shockwave, that's where that Orianna damage comes in one burst, and then she just starts hitting you with the ball. Just all the way through the fight, starts getting that AoE damage down. And for Gamelord, they have a considerable amount of damage. ViV do have some tankiness to them, though, with this Garen, with the Camille, with the Braum. I'm a little worried for them, though, that Kranix is the only primary source of damage. Like, this Ziggs has to stay alive and has to take out every single member of Gamelord, pretty much.
Exactly, and that's where you need the Serfs embrace for. And the team fights are going to be so funny to watch. I can already tell, because Gamelord is probably going to be like, all right, go on Ziggs, go on Ziggs. They're all going to go on Ziggs. They're going to shoot the Nami ultimate. But then ViV Esports obviously has Fluor on that Braum, able to block out those engages from Nami. But he cannot block out everything, right? He cannot block out the Zed. He cannot just block out the Fiora. So it's going to be interesting to see how ViV Esports is going to hold Gamelord back.
Yes, actually, Fluor is going to go forward. They forced the stasis out from Zefta. That's an immediate kill onto Hester. They found their one target. They said, okay, if we can't get ourselves the Orianna, we'll just take what we can with the Nami. But Lonely Kid is into the point of the game where Fiora can do damage. The Grand Challenge completes and Lonely Kid gets a little bit of his health back. It's actually been a 2-for-2 overall. And that Orianna still has everything but the ultimate available, as that means Gamelord are going to be able to block the attempt towards this Elder Drake. I wonder if our observers can pull up the items for just a moment. I know we have only a quick moment before this next Elder Drake fight, because I want to see who's got teleport available. I think that becomes very key when we have like the likes of Fiora in a game.
There it is.
Teleport actually purchased
teleport.
right away by Zefta. They know that they want to rush down this dragon, and without having teleport on Lonely Kid, that makes it really difficult. Oh, he actually undid it. Zefta undid the teleport buy and went back to stasis. Okay.
Unbelievable. 7 stasis enchants in this game. Honestly, I hate to say it, but I'm sick and tired of seeing stasis enchant. Everyone is using stasis enchant to just counter engage. And right now, Ziggs does have the enabled build, which is the Seraph's Embrace. Ziggs and Orianna basically have the same things available, as in like the same defensive tools, the exhaust, some defensive abilities, and the Seraph's Embrace. Although Orianna does actually have more damage than the Ziggs. Even though Kranix on the Ziggs has that Luden's Echo, which is going to do a lot of damage to squishy enemies. That's how they were able to blow up Heste every time. Redemption is going to be able to shred through that front line with the Void Staff stress.
Ooh, Ruiz may very well have been caught by Millip, and of course Camille is also going to have damage this late in the game as well. Camille just generally has damage and will be able to apply it, but has to throw herself into the fight just in the same way that Tyrus does. Kranix actually just sent out the ultimate. I think he maybe had seen Gamelord grouped, but looking at the health bars, they're still very, very high. Did not burn a flash from it either, so big ultimate used from Kranix. But it's already a third of the cooldown back. Like, this Ziggs ultimate is nearly available again.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about earlier as well. Like, Ziggs can get away with using ultimates like that, but he didn't really make it worth. As Gamelord is full HP right now, Gamelord should have instantly tried to look for a fight, because obviously without the Ziggs ultimate, you have a massive advantage as Gamelord, but it's going to be up in a few seconds anyways, Stress.
Yeah, both of these compositions don't really lend themselves to, starting this fight unless you spot a weakness from your opponent. Sometimes we just see teams like forcing a fight. That was a better ultimate, as it's going to chunk through some of Gamelord's health bars. And I think the fact that we have this Camille down in the bottom side is going to buy a little bit of time for ViV. I think both teams only have one sweeper, or at least Gamelord did the last time I checked. And it means there's so many wards just scattered around that nobody is willing to take a dragon. Nobody is willing to start a baron. It's kind of suicidal at this point. Finally, Tyrus is going to sweep. Yeah, one sweeper apiece. It means that there's just so many wards still on the area that Gamelord, they have vision of ViV and ViV have vision of Gamelord.
Well, Gamelord doesn't have vision on ViV anymore after that sweeper, though. That was an amazing sweeper by Tyrus, just sweeping away 3 wards right there. And now ViV has a massive advantage. Massive, massive advantage. And oh my god, that damage stress.
Hester is going to need to heal Redemption up before this fight. And I mean, there is a little bit of time here as Millip is topside. I believe doesn't have a teleport, as everybody in the game had something else. That's a good body slam onto Sharks. It's going to at least put some damage down. Mid lane, they're cutting into it, and this is where Camille can utilize some of that mobility, and they didn't even need it as the minions pushed it down. Gamelord kind of getting torn apart a little across the map by ViV, and now ViV are going to start up that Elder Drake for themselves. It's Cloud, so we normally see teams contest this very hotly. In comes the Camille from the side, and Gamelord out of position. An unlikely mistake from Gamelord is going to punish them hard, because ViV have taken out 2 members of Gamelord to start this, and it's only Lonely Kid, Ruiz, and Hester forced to flash away. I think this is probably game 1 in the bag for ViV. If they can get these last few kills, it should be enough time to push down or at least get an objective. But Gamelord, Lonely Kid, they've got this Fiora. He's just so low health, and it looked for a moment like he was going to be able to turn it back around, but Hester could not keep him alive. Ruiz couldn't join the fight on such low health either, and Gamelord, they lose 3 and they lose the Elder Dragon.
And I was just gonna say, ViV Esports is not doing this dragon, they're just baiting the enemy, because they have that Ziggs and the Camille, which is a full engage, and now we get a desperate teleport.
Ruiz is going to try and block it, gets the shadow out. Can he get out with his life? It does seem like he can for now, as Ruiz has got Sharks. It's going to be the execute as soon as Garen's ultimate is available, but it's not there. Deathmark to try and create some space, and he actually does it. Ruiz has managed to get himself out. The dragon is still getting taken. It's going to go over to ViV. It's taken in the end. Garen's going to pick up the kill onto Nami, but a last-ditch attempt by Ruiz and Hester may at least have stopped ViV from transferring dragon right into Baron.
Yeah, and ViV Esports doing an amazing job playing that composition fully to their powers. And if we look at this replay, I wish we would have been able to look a little further back. But basically what happened, ViV Esports was just doing the Elder Dragon, baiting the enemies from Gamelord to go in. And then we saw the Orianna and the Gragas go a little too deep. And then what did ViV Esports do? Camille engage. Ziggs ultimate, just fully engage on those two champions, forcing out the stasis and getting 2 kills before the fight had even really started. Just an absolutely amazing job from ViV Esports right there, baiting the team from Gamelord.
We're back in, and that's the jungler. Tyra's down, as maybe Gamelord have done enough to stop the Baron. It all depends on whether this Camille can get into the fight. Lonely Kid is going to be able to stasis or at least riposte her way through this fight, but here comes Millip. Millip is going to clean up. That's everything that Viv need. It's a double kill as Ruiz drops. Redemption is down as well. Lonely Kid is going to try and fight their way through it. Kranix survives. That's going to be it, Viv. They have a wave in the top side. It's not enough from this full AP Nami to be able to clear the wave. He's going to try, but Hester can't get enough done. And in a surprise game 1, Viv are going to break the base of Gamelord and put themselves 1-0 up in this series.
And Millip really showing what he's made of with those beautiful Camille engages. Just ViV Esports really showing class in this game, destroying a team like Gamelord. Stress. This is not just any team. This is Gamelord. This is the team that we had ranked to be the best team in Europe, and they just lost against ViV Esports.
Yeah, really solid performance from ViV, and it looked like ViV were getting sold out a little bit. There was this kind of mid lane play that there was a struggle, but everything from that engage in the lower jungle, I would love to see it from a couple of seconds back, as you said, because I think so much of it comes from that mid lane getting pushed in, the tower going down, and that sweeper in the river allowed Viv to just say, okay, well, we know that Gamelord are split, so let's use our composition, finally jump on them with the Camille, get the Vi in the mix, and get the kills. Because these skirmishes early game were starting to go towards Gamelord. Like, they really were hammering home. I think there was a flick of a switch for Viv where they were like, okay, let's just use the Ziggs ultimate, get damage down, try and get kills as much as we can.
Yeah, and the problem from Gamelord as well is the Nami was essentially useless in the late game. We saw some nice little things in the early and mid game from the Nami, but in the late game, she constantly got caught, right? Like Heste was constantly getting caught, and the Luden's Echo was not really doing any work. And also the ultimate just got blocked out by Fluor, and being in a 5 versus 4 position in the late game, ViV Esports was more easily able to defend Kranix on that Ziggs than Gamelord defending Redemption. And ultimately, that's what lost the game from Gamelord. And that's how ViV Esports was able to win the fights constantly. They just constantly killed the Nami and got those beautiful engages from Millip on the Camille, and they were able to just win the game.
I feel like watching that fight back, Tyrus, I think, even hit 2 people with the charged up Vault Breaker, the ability. 1 gets 2 people, locks them down, puts the damage out, and I feel like Kranix's ultimate was basically always available, regardless of if you just used it. Millip, first pick priority on this Camille, makes it work in the late game. I was saying that Viv had a single damage threat. Turns out Camille still pretty good, even though we haven't seen a whole lot of Camille be successful in the last couple of weeks. A very surprising game 1 between these two teams, in the sense that like Viv just looked on exactly the same level as Gamelord, and maybe even just a step ahead.
Yeah, okay. Indeed, like, look at this damage as well. Redemption and Kranix, as we said, these were probably going to be the main carries, but actually Ruiz dealing 23,000 damage on the Zed. I didn't really feel it, as in, like, I didn't really feel like he did that much damage, but interesting to see that he was also able to dash out this much damage. And as we can see, an incredibly close game. We can basically see when the objectives were taken, it went up and down and up and down. And then in the very late game, when ViV Esports got that beautiful engage, that's when they skyrocketed their lead and won the game. The Elder Dragon secured their victory, and just absolutely amazing gameplay from ViV Esports that game.
I think the comment about Zed and where the damage comes from is one of the things about playing into the likes of Garen and Camille. Is like, you can put a lot of damage out, but if they don't die, then they're going to get most of that health back on those engages, right? So it's a really like different game than what I was expecting. Really impressed by ViV and the way that they played around the Ziggs. I actually think Gamelord, even though coming out of the draft, I think that they had the advantage. I think they letting that Ziggs go over, giving them the Camille, in hindsight now, was a whole lot riskier perhaps than they were expecting. Let's take a look at the play of the game and see exactly how those two champions punished Gamelord.
Definitely, and I'm hoping that we're going to be seeing that Elder Dragon fight, because then I can actually show a proper analysis. So right here, look at this. ViV Esports is just baiting, and their Milu comes from the top side, engages, slows both of them, and they just do a full engage. And right here, as you can see, Gragas and Orianna dead, and here it's just over. Basically, it's over. You're in a 5 versus 3 situation. Sure, Ruiz is able to kill out Kranix on the Ziggs, but he has already used his full engage. And right now, Gamelord doesn't have anything anymore to be able to kill Sharky on the Garen or Tyrus on the Vine. As you can see, it's just desperation right here from Gamelord. Just that bait that ViV Esports did on the Dragon, and the Milu coming from nowhere from the top side. Just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful call from ViV Esports right there, and I'm hoping to see more of that in the second game.
Yeah, that flank is a Camille player's dream. Being able to walk from mid lane right through the jungle and pick off a carry is exactly what Camille wants to do. Well, we're going to have ourselves a couple of minutes break before we get into ViV and Gamelord Game 2. Stick with us. We'll be back to see whether Gamelord can bounce back or whether ViV can shock the world and 2-0 their way to the upper bracket finals.
Frozen over, stuck in time, out of breath in my mind. Is this how it will be when you promise this, you and me? Could it be us? Could it be us? Till forever, forever us. Could it be us? Could it be us? Till forever. Forever, say you'll be mine. Say that you will, say that you will. Say you'll be mine. Say that you will, say that you will. You will always be the deepest part of me. Heavy hearts healed in time.
Ready?
Welcome back to the WREC, where we have had a shock Game 1 win from ViV against Gamelord. We've been telling you for weeks that Gamelord are likely to make it to the finals, and ViV are one game away from putting Gamelord into the lower bracket. I'm Stress, joined by Health Devil. That was one of my favorite games, I think, of the WREC so far. Like, there's a lot to talk about from that game, and I'll let you pick whatever you want to talk about to start this off, Health.
I mean, what should we talk about? Like, just the way that the game played out, the beautiful way that ViV Esports was playing that game, constantly catching out someone. Because during the draft, we talked about how their draft works, which is catching out an enemy, right? With the Camille ultimate, Ziggs ultimate, etc., etc. And that's exactly what they did. Well, like, they did it in different ways. They caught out Heste, who cannot do anything about it, and they used objectives to bait the enemy to go in, and then they caught him out. Also, Milup on the Camille coming from the side. Just, I really loved that the way that they were constantly catching out Gamelord in that match, Stress.
Yeah, this is the kind of game where when you see top teams facing against each other, the window of error is so small that you have to exploit. And ViV managed to find that one big fight that then snowballs into the Baron on the next rotation of once they've recalled. So ViV do take that first win. Let's hear from Stuart a little bit about that first game between ViV and Gamelord.
Thank you very much, Stress. There is a lot to break down, and I want to start off with the draft. Interesting enough, Gamelord went for target bans on the red side of the map, leaving so many power picks open. They decided to ban the Varus and the Vayne away from Kranex, and it didn't really work out for them in the end. We talk about the first pick priority as well. ViV, interesting enough, going for the Camille instead of Fiora, baiting Gamelord to take Fiora themselves. And to be honest, Lonely Kid didn't look that comfortable on Fiora. You can see that Tyrus was focusing that Baron lane, and that will be a big focus going into the rest of it. And that allowed ViV Esports to pick the likes of Ziggs and Garen afterwards. And then into the game itself, Vi, Camille, Ziggs, all these champions were able to catch out Gamelord. The last team fight was so huge, catching out Redemption and Zifter. And unfortunately, Gamelord weren't able to close it out. But a really close first game. It's going to be an interesting one to see if Gamelord can bounce back. I'm really looking forward to the draft as well to see what's going to be changed. So let's head into that draft with Hells and Stress. Back to you.
Cheers, Stuart. Yeah, I want to revisit the point actually there about the picks, the bans, I should say, of Varus and Vayne. Like, when you ban two carries in the bottom lane and there's only really one left, okay, Orianna was still there. If you don't prioritize that carry on your first rotation, you have basically said, have two strong picks, have three strong picks that we can't afford to ban in this game. And then they gave Ziggs as well. Like, that's one thing I don't understand. Is like, Orianna's still strong, but Ziggs is currently like that king of the bottom lane, at least from what we've seen here in Europe the last couple of days.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to be seeing a new draft. And I got to say, this draft is definitely my top, or like, is going to be definitely in my top 3 most interesting drafts that we've ever seen in the WREC. So what are they going to do, Stress? What are they going to do? What is going to be banned out? Because there's so many picks, right? Target bans, the Ziggs, the Camille, the Rakan, etc., etc. There's just so much stuff to look at.
Yeah, and we're staying on the same side. So ViV on the blue side, that means that Gamelord selected red side. It feels like they perhaps are going to stick with their strategy. No, they're not. Immediately a change from both sides, actually. ViV first banned Corki in the last game, and now the Camille is banned away from Gamelord. So likely that means that they're going to have to drop. They banned Olaf, Varus, Vayne. We'll see what makes it through that didn't make it through in the last game.
Yeah, definitely. And Gamelord seems to be target banning Milup right here, right? They don't want to see him on Camille again, because last game he absolutely destroyed them. He like destroyed them. The thing is though, Milup can play other champions as well, and he's really good. And I would say equally as good on them. Like, we've seen him on Darius too. Absolutely hard carrying the game on Darius. So is Gamelord going to be banning that away too? I don't feel like they can, because Ziggs is going to be open. And I feel like Gamelord is going to have to ban away that Ziggs right here, Stress.
Yeah, one of those bot lane carries though from Varus and Vayne are going to be open if they do have to ban Ziggs. I mean, we'll see what they let through and whether they reprioritize their own picks. They picked the Gragas to flex and then the Fiora as well. So we're heading into that first pick of the draft for ViV. They will, of course, have one less option once Gamelord's bans have come through. We'll see whether they still prioritize their Baron lane. It might be a Fiora picked up here by Miller, but we did just see Gamelord pick the Fiora early and get beaten.
They actually, Gamelord sticks with the Vayne ban, and that leaves the Ziggs open. Although, is ViV Esports gonna take the bait? Because Gamelord is not leaving Ziggs open for no reason, right? Like, they have a counter draft for it. And even though their last draft was perhaps a bit questionable with the Nami pick, there is a reason that they just leave the Ziggs open right there. And indeed, ViV Esports chooses to not take the bait. They just go for the safe pick, which is the Fiora. There's no real big counters to the Fiora. And you're giving Fiora to either Tyrus or Milo. Both of them are really good at it. So I like that ViV Esports is not taking the bait right there. And as Gamelord right now, yet again, like, are you going to pick the Ziggs right here? Because there is still going to be counters to it that ViV Esports could be picking, Stress.
Yeah, that's totally true. There's the Ziggs. I don't know how many counter matchups are actually available for this. I in my estimation, I would have felt like Gamelord should have brought one out last round if they were gonna do it. I wonder whether we'll see some. Oh, that's a heavy poke composition already with a Jace and a Ziggs. Lots of long range threat. I wonder whether we'll see ViV air towards a traditional AD carry and then maybe the likes of a Yuumi or something like that, which is available.
Varus.
We saw Yuumi banned in the last game. Varus is up too. Varus can be played into Ziggs. Absolutely. Less so like great with that Yuumi, so I think we'll look maybe towards the traditional supports that we've seen ViV play in the past, but always got to look at that option when the cat is available. It's always there. A lot of power picks up still. Diana up, we've seen Gragas a lot. Darius is there that we mentioned. Garen still available, so lots and lots of picks available for both ViV and Gamelord, depending on what.
There it is. And this is what I mean. I feel like Gamelord fell into a trap right here. And even though Ziggs is basically always going to be good, Ziggs does kind of struggle against that Varus and the Fiora and then also the Garen, because these are champions that can just dive you. And I feel like this is going according to plan for ViV Esports, even though they're up against the Jace. I feel that they are comfortable playing against that Ziggs. And we have an Alistar. Oh my god, we haven't seen Alistar too much, Stress.
Really high priority on Alistar. I mean, this tells you that Gamelord know they need an engaged champion to come from here. In the case that this Jace is going into the jungle, it removes a lot of your engaged potential in game. So this is like strangely high priority on Alistar. It tells you that they did not want this ban because whatever the rest of their composition looks like needed this Alistar to plug a gap.
Yeah, and this time Gamelord actually banning out the Braum as well. And it just really feels like Gamelord is not... Gamelord doesn't seem as focused on the global draft. They're just really doing target bans. And as Stuart mentioned, like 3 out of 4 bans are target bans, which is the Camille. Camille is always good, but it's also a target ban. Then we have the Vayne, which is obviously a target ban, and then the Braum as well. They seem to be target banning a lot, leaving open a lot of options for ViV Esports. And ViV Esports actually also target ban. There it is again. They're also banning the Vi. So they really don't want to be facing up against the champions that they played against in the last game.
Yeah, that's 3 out of 5 champions banned away from that last game, plus that Vayne target ban on top of it. We'll see what ViV round this out with. They're trying to take away kill threat here, like finishing threat, and that's at least in taken away to stop any other engage. Of course, that Jace can be played both in the Baron lane or in the middle lane. We've even seen it yesterday as a bot lane carry, but I wouldn't expect that with that Ziggs already picked up. Gamelord, it'll likely be jungle here if they are picking a jungle, or a flexible top like a Gragas where it could go towards the jungle. Gragas is still there. It's going to be actually just a flat top laner when it's Darius saying, okay, let's pick up some of that damage to finish fights. Seraphine, you've mentioned, is available.
Yeah. I want to see Seraphine on ViV Esports right now.
Yeah,
because they're up against a lot of these melee champions. Well, half melee, Jace, Alistar, Darius. Seraphine works incredibly good against champions like that. Now, I really want to see a Seraphine pick coming through from ViV Esports right there, because especially if you combine it with the Varus, no one can really engage you. They actually go for an engaged comp as well. They go for the Leona. What?
We do not see Leona very often, and typically, like in PC, you see Leona and Alistar. Like there's some funny interactions with Headbutt around that. Seraphine. The only thing I was going to say is we've seen Seraphine played more as a carry than as a support. So I wonder with that Varus already whether the allocation of gold would be weird in bottom lane. We're looking at mid laner now. It's like okay, so double flex between top and mid lane from this Garen and this Gragas. That's an instant Ahri picked up. It's Rui's Ahri as well. So we've seen him play a ton of this champion, and we know what picks can be made with this Ahri. And what I would say though is this Gamelord composition has a lot of damage, but is not really straightforward. Like, if you get damage down before a team fight, then you can get the Darius to tidy it up. But Gamelord are looking for picks with that poke damage, whereas ViV, they have this full-on engaged composition where they just want to go aggressive.
And ViV also has the poke damage as well, right? From the Varus. So I feel that Gamelord is really gonna have to do their best to defend the Ziggs. And yet again, it feels like they just don't have the right tools to do it. Because in the last game, they had the Orianna as well. They just didn't seem to have the right tools to do it, especially up against that composition for ViV Esports. Having that Leona, the Gragas, like all of these engaging champions. So it's gonna be interesting to see how Gamelord is gonna be able to keep that Ziggs alive. Obviously, they have the Ahri, which is a very strong early game champion. And very likely, Ahri is going to be matched up either against the Gragas, Fiora, or the Garen in the mid lane. So Ahri is going to win that lane. She can push out the waves and she can roam around. So they have to play around that.
Yeah, they have to play around that. I think one thing also that we need to keep our eyes on is I feel like Hester looks like a completely different player when he's playing an engage support, when he's playing something that can get into the fight. Nami, not really that kind of way that we're used to Hester playing, and the game one didn't look so great for them. So maybe this Alistair here is like, okay, with Rakan banned, let's just try and get fights going. Let's utilize some of what Hester does best. And then with this Ahri, with the damage that's going to come from Jace, tidy up the fight and get it going. So I think Gamelord have a few more tools to actually have a wider set of plays here rather than just this single target pick off against the Ziggs. But it's Gamelord with the Ziggs themselves this time, as Hester and Redemption down in this bottom lane have been forced away. And they're pushed back away from the wave level 1. That's one of the things Varus does very, very well. Can contest that early game in the lane.
So it seems like they've put Fiora in the jungle on Tyrus, Milup on the Gragas in the Baron lane up against the Darius, and then we have Sharks on the Garen in the mid lane. And I feel this mid lane matchup may be a little scary for ViV Esports. I love how the chat is still fully going for Gamelord. Last time it was 67% for Gamelord, and now it's 83%, even though Gamelord lost the first game.
There's some copium coming on there. That's chat are desperate to see it hold on. I do think this composition, even though it's a little bit more unorthodox, doesn't really have a specific style. I feel like from the problems of game one, this gives Gamelord more options. Like this allows them to say, okay, if Zefta and Ruiz start getting ahead, they can feed a lot of gold to Lonely Kid in these fights and allow them to deal the damage. Ruiz now has 3 people in the lane opposite him. That's one of the strengths of Varus, is we'll be able to stay safe in lane, but in comes Hester as well to help deny on this cannon wave. Zefta was there as well, doesn't have to commit himself as he's going to be able to go towards that crab on the top side. He does have 2 people coming up towards him though, so does have to back away as Lonely Kid is dealing damage to Milup. I don't think they can actually secure this crab.
Yeah, Lonely Kid has the lane priority, and as you can see, he's going to be here much faster, and there it is. Gamelord takes the free Rift Scuttler, and honestly, that's all because of the Baron lane. Milup wasn't able to push out the wave up against Lonely Kid. Lonely Kid was able to help his team, and they got a free Rift Scuttler, and now they're going for another Rift Scuttler. So already starting off the game at a pretty substantial advantage for Gamelord right there, and that's really all because of Lonely Kid's advantage in the lane. He was able to push the lane out, and then Milup was just left there and wasn't able to help his team, and Gamelord with 2 Rift Scuttlers right there, Stress.
Yeah, and then the same thing basically happens with the fact that Ruiz pushed the lane out in mid while they were taking top crabs. So it's like you basically are just using those minion waves, pushing them out and allowing them to create space for you to take those objectives. So a lot of river vision control already from both of those crabs being down. Redemption does get his recall stopped as Flower now is forced to back away from Hester, lands a stun. Redemption doesn't really have the finishing power here as Hester had Ignite, didn't use it, and they couldn't quite get the damage to stick, but they did force the flash out from Hester. So actually, Gamelord kind of end up on the bad side of that, as Zefta down here now can put damage out, but I don't know that they can get a kill here.
And I really love how Gamelord is playing around that composition very well, because during the draft we mentioned indeed, like Ahri is really good at pushing out waves, and that's how they were able to very easily get the double scuttler. But there indeed was a very weird engage by Hester. He fully engaged, while Redemption didn't even have mana. And right here we see it again, by the way, Ruiz pushing out the wave and going for a roam. Like, this is what he needs to try to be doing, right? Here it didn't work, of course, but this is what he needs to do. He needs to roam around and he needs to try to go for those ganks. Unfortunately, it didn't work right now. And we have a fight in the Baron lane.
Lonely Kid doesn't hit the apprehend, so that's going to basically spell the end of that fight for now. I think one thing undoing Ruiz a little bit, this ward around mid lane, makes it so that they basically have a good read on the side of ViV. Hang on, top lane, Milup has actually found the explosive cask as Lonely Kid is going to flash away, avoids the Zenith Blade from Flower, and Flower is going to have to back away. Does have that Solar Flare available, so can look for those long-range engages. Maybe trying to get it work on mid lane as Ruiz. They know there's no jungle on the bottom side, and Hester's just used that plant on the top side. They know the people are around. That's going to spell the end of that engage.
Yeah, and I feel like Fluor could have been a bit more aggressive right there because Milup used his ultimate to push Darius back, but Fluor didn't even use his flash. He didn't even use his ultimate. He didn't even try to go for the fight. So he actually decided to just save his abilities and
you want aggression? You want aggression? Hester's going to show you some aggression as Zefta flashes over the wall. Can he get the long range? Yes, he does. Swaps to hammer form, I should say cannon form, and gets that last pick off. However, Solar Flare comes through. They got the grand challenge locked to Zefta trying to get out. There's the Ziggs ultimate from long range. Hester gets another stun. This is the difference of him playing that engage support. However, it's not quite enough to be able to pick up the kill. They force Cyrus's flash out and back away, but it's 1 kill apiece on this matchup to begin the game.
Yeah, and they forced some important ultimates as well from both sides, really. We see the Leona ultimate and the Gragas ultimate and the Fiora ultimate being used, but on the opposite side on Gamelord, also the Alistar and the Ziggs ultimate. And honestly, I don't feel any team has a real advantage right here. Like, they're both probably still going to be just as strong during the teamfights. And here we see it indeed. Redemption and Chronix in the mid lane. They are able to push out the waves. Like we see the lane stops come through again. But here we can see Chronix dealing massive damage with his poke.
Yeah, a lot of damage. However, the wave still stands, and that means that the Rift Herald is first to it from Gamelord's side of things. And that means ViV, they're going to try and get down towards that bottom side of the Rift to try and take Drake. I believe Redemption is half health, so can't really contest right now. Actually recalled and is trying to get back close enough. Still about just under a quarter of that cooldown on his ultimate available, but ViV do not commit. This is a great use of the Rift Herald. This is exactly what you want to see. As soon as Varus showed on the ward in River, they're like, just get mid tower at all costs. Make sure we power it down with the Jace.
Bot tower, by the way.
Wow, Gamelord even defend bot tower and be able to take that mid tower from it. That's huge. Ruiz has 2 low health targets in front of him, and ViV gets stalled out. Really good passage of play from Gamelord. This is massive.
Definitely, and this is very likely going to be a dragon going over to Gamelord as well. They're 1,000 gold ahead. They took the mid lane turret and they defended the bot lane turret. This is massive for Gamelord right here. Just beautiful macro gameplay. ViV Esports thought that they could get away with a free turret in the bot side of the map. They didn't want to take a fight against the composition of Gamelord, which makes sense, right? Like, they're up against a Jace and up against an Ahri. These are 2 very strong early game champions, especially during team fights. So you don't really want to match up against them. So they thought that they could get a free turret in the bot lane and then try to fight for the dragon as well. Instead, they didn't get anything. They lost both objectives and they lost the mid lane turret. So this is disastrous for ViV Esports stress.
Yeah, it's going to be really difficult for ViV to play around the side lanes here because, like, Ahri and Jace are going to be able to pick off anybody from ViV really quickly if they end up on the side lane. And same goes with Darius. They have that kill threat. And being able to kind of push out mid really far allows Ziggs to kind of drift up towards the top side. That was a flash out from Milup to make sure he avoided the apprehend from Lonely Kid. This is what Gamelord can do now. With the Ziggs ultimate, they can hold it and either commit it topside to look at a kill or commit it mid lane to defend the tower push. There's 4 people pushing mid from the side of ViV, and Ruiz is there to at least clear out the minions as well. Milup is, buying a little bit of time with his barrels to try and push this back out, but they are going to go eventually. Gamelord, they show a little bit of peekaboo in and out of the bush here as Redemption is going to put damage down. Explosive Cask is going to blast them back under the tower, and Gamelord will get out of there with that kill. Yeah, in they go as Lonely Kid. There's the ultimate out of Ziggs. Doesn't do as much damage as Redemption would have liked, but Jace can pick it off. There's the damage from afar from Zefta, and Ruiz is going to find himself Sharks in the middle lane, and this is suddenly Gamelord having woken up. Gamelord are finally going aggressive. Maybe it's Hester on an engaged support. Maybe it's just the fact that they can get these tower plays down, but this is the Gamelord we were expecting to see.
This is indeed the game that we're expecting to see. They're really playing that composition to their powers. They've already gotten 2 turrets. They've gotten so many kills. All of the objectives. This is the dominant Gamelord that we're expecting. Zefta with the beautiful, beautiful damage coming through. Just securing those kills under the turret. Just like really well played from Gamelord all over the board. They were waiting to dive that turret. Milup couldn't escape anywhere. And right here, they're going to be pressuring the bot lane turret as well.
Yeah, Lonely Kid is going to do this while the rest of the team are playing on top side. That means Ruiz and Hester see if they can get a kill at this point. We'll check it out after the replay. This is Ruiz actually basically 1v1ing Sharks. This entire fight chases him down as the rest of the team is picking up kills, and Sharks just cannot contend with the damage from this Ahri. Oh, did we have to show the flash charm missing? Did we have to do him like that?
Yeah, but that's the thing that Ruiz can do on the Ahri. Yeah, they just killed Milup, but that's the thing. And here we see him again.
Yeah, Charm lands. It's all too easy for Ruiz. They put damage down, force a flash out from the Mega Inferno Bomb, force another flash out, and this is just ViV hemorrhaging of big cooldowns, and Gamelord are just walking their way through the jungle and getting any objective they want.
They're running their way through the jungle, it seems. They're really getting whatever they want. And Ruiz just really playing the Ahri to her powers. We know that Ruiz is already famous for his Ahri. Just, starting every teamfight with a beautiful ultimate. So here we look at a replay where they killed Milop, actually. And here, yet again, it's because of Ruiz. Ruiz just going in, charming the Ahri, and then Heste following up with the engage. And this is why they picked the Alistar as well. It's a really good engaging champion, but also a really good following up champion. After Ahri engages, you can also engage with Alistar. And there is definitely going to be a fight happening right here, Strauss.
Yeah, Heste even just prioritizing his mobility as much as possible. Protobelt has himself the dead man's plate as well, can just get himself as quickly into the fight as he wants. Ooh, good satchel charge is actually gonna, even though the stun locks get Redemption to a little bit of safety, now they're gonna be able to re-engage. There's the Protobelt into the Pulverize from Heste, and with that ultimate running, they cannot stick enough damage down onto the Alistar. Charm lands again, and it's Ruiz all through this game. 8 kills to 1 in favor of Gamelord. They can now look towards Rift Herald and Dragon at the same time. Tyrus cannot get close enough to defend this objective.
And looking for Tyrus' jungle, as you can see, they're not leaving anything for ViV Esports. This is the Gamelord that we expect to see, knowing exactly what they can do. Zefta got the Rift Herald for free. They're starting off the Dragon, and they're going for the jungle. They're just not getting anything anymore.
Pulverize into the stun. Tyrus avoids the charm, at least as Ruiz threw it a little bit wide, and that means Tyrus does not fall. However, the objectives have gone already. There's nothing to take from this, and they can't even push out top tower because Redemption's ultimate is nearly available, so even if that's a big stack of waves, Floor, you are dead. That's not going to end well for you. He's going to try and soak up a little bit of time, but nope, not going to work. Even gets Darius ultimate to reset from that.
Definitely, and again, just perfect gameplay by Gamelord. They didn't lose anything right there. I just want to highlight, they literally didn't lose anything. They got everything and they didn't lose anything. And Redemption, indeed, on the top lane turret as well, just uses his ultimate to push out the wave. They've even taken the entire jungle of Tyrus, and I'm sure Zefta's going to take the red buff as well. He actually doesn't go for it. He could have, but they're just taking whatever they can. They're not leaving anything. And here we can still see Kranix dealing quite a lot of damage on the arrow.
Oh,
but I want to highlight
Kranix, the charm lands, and there we go. Kranix is down. He has damage, but trying to clear mid lane is a little too dangerous with so many people around that jungle.
Yeah, and I really want to highlight I cannot highlight because we have another engage.
Well, Lonely Kid, he's going to be able to flash out towards Heste, and Heste's going to try and body block here. There's the damage from Ziggs. You're engaging on the Darius, and it's the Darius that gets the execute.
Oh, and the engage was good, but unfortunately the follow-up was not as good because they just cannot kill Lonely Kid on that Darius right there. But oh yeah, what I was gonna talk about is the dragons, because I cannot talk again.
We'll give you some time after the game to talk about this. Heste, that's gonna be a double lockdown with that solar flare. Heste is stunned as he flashes away. No way does he get out. Heste, support fight. Heste tries to Protobelt back in, and Leona actually gets the kill from that. And actually, maybe that's an overextension from Gamelord. 2 kills go over as Redemption was busy top lane. Ruiz is now gonna have to try and back himself away from this fight. Does get a little bit of a heal there as Grand Challenge is gonna open up under the tower. 1 kill, and Lonely Kid is nowhere near. He'd already fallen in this engage. It's Zefta that had stasis under the tower. Redemption tried to throw out the ultimate, and I think ViV are going to back away with just a few small kills from that, but that is at least going to stop the bleeding a little bit.
Yeah, there's just so much action in this game, and it's actually very important for Zefta to not die, because Lonely Kid just died and gave a 600 gold shutdown to Kranix. That is pretty huge, and if Zefta had died as well, it would have been an even bigger shutdown. So if we look into this replay, we can see that Fluor actually had a beautiful ultimate, and they all really had a beautiful engage. They were able to pick out Heste, they were able to go on Ruiz, and they were able to get Lonely Kid, which was really huge for ViV Esports. Then it seemed like they could kill the Jace as well, but we had the stasis enchant come through, and being invulnerable or untargetable even for 3 seconds is just too much. So as we can see right here, the dive was amazing, but then when they go on Jace, stasis, he even gets a kill, and they just cannot get the kill anymore. And that's the power of stasis, and that's how Zefta was able to stay alive. And we have another
Hester's engaging again as Hester playing frontline has the unbreakable will running, and that means that Gamelord can just chase through. They have resettled themselves from that mess of an engage in middle lane. Tower has fallen, and they're pushing towards the inhibitor as well. They will have Satchel Charge available eventually for Redemption. I believe it's on cooldown right now. They don't even need it because Rift Herald is going to charge in. Back away after 2 towers down. And that means that ViV now are going to have super minions pushing through that middle lane. And now there's even a bottom lane tower push going on as well from Lonely Kid. It's going to be quite a difficult attempt to push it down. Although he's actually just going to take it from behind as Sharks. Yeah, no, it's going to run out of minions. Sharks is able to take him out, and Redemption couldn't get that Satchel Charge in time. Baron has been started. Gamelord just won everything.
Gamelord is just taking everything, as you said. I'm just quickly going to say what I wanted to say, which is the dragon that Gamelord has, which is the Ocean Dragon, is incredibly powerful in this matchup because of the poking compositions. It basically denies Varus' poking. If Kranix goes for poke, Gamelord can just heal up because they have that Omnivamp coming through from the Ocean Dragon. So just wanted to say that real quick. 3 minutes later, I was finally able to say it. But Gamelord did get the Baron? Did they just get the...
Yeah, they did just get the Baron. Yeah, because they pushed that bottom lane, and I think ViV just didn't realize it was being taken at the same time. And now they're going to go aggressive as Gamelord over the wall from Hester is going to pick off the first one. The rest of Gamelord are going to break into the middle lane and take a kill on to Sharks. 2 members of ViV have already fallen, and I think this is just everything that they needed it to. Lonely Kid is going to play defense around the corner. Dunk Master can still play point guard, and that is enough for Lonely Kid to get the execution. He's looking for Kranix. There's no friend here anymore, as Lonely Kid is going to lead the team all the way back through middle lane. This is going to be Gamelord evening up the series to 1-1. Gamelord feels like they've finally woken up. This composition had all the damage they need to even the series up and give us a 3-game series for our first semi-final.
Yeah, definitely. And this feels like the real Gamelord. First game, it felt like, they were just not into it yet, but this is the real Gamelord, the dominant team that does, they got everything that game. They literally got everything. Like, there was not a single thing that ViV Esports was able to get in that game, besides like maybe 1 or 2 turrets, but this is the Gamelord that we expect to see, and I'm expecting a very easy 3rd game from them as well. I mean, obviously we can get surprised, because the draft is very important. In the first game, ViV Esports did have an amazing draft, so wow, this is going to make the 3rd game very interesting for us.
Yeah, this I think was way more of what we were thinking this series would look like coming into it. I'm so glad ViV looked competitive in game number 1, because I think it means it's basically not over in this series. It now does depend on this draft, but like Gamelord getting Hester onto an engaged support has a total different look for this team.
Yeah, definitely. And also Zefta on the Jace. That's definitely going to be banned away, because Zefta on that Jace just did so much damage this game. It was absolutely incredible. And I believe he only had like 1 or 0 deaths even. I didn't see him die too much. And just like Gamelord was able to get some very big power picks right there. And indeed, Hester on those engaging supports does feel much better on the Enchanter supports. Like him on the Nami didn't really do anything, but him on the Alistar was big part of the reason that they were able to win this game, Strauss.
A massive part. I think Ruiz gets a shout out as well for the Ahri, like constantly looking at picks, getting the initial kills to start fights, and that allowed Gamelord to just continue to walk through the enemy jungle, like run through, as you said at one point, just like catching anybody they could. They even snuck the Baron, got themselves the objective, and then it was just into this bottom lane fight that ended the game. And I just feel like ViV could not output enough damage, could not survive through what Gamelord had for them. And Lonely Kid, I mean, Lonely Kid had not a quiet game by any stretch of the imagination, but just wasn't needed as much as the rest of the team. And he even weathered a lot of the engaged top lane to begin this game. So I think Gamelord just to the level we were expecting from them coming into game number 1, but it just took him a little while to get there.
I mean, look at that. Everyone from Gamelord just died once, and Redemption didn't even die. This is what I'm talking about. This was just basically a near perfect game coming from Gamelord, macro-wise and micro-wise as well. Look at that. Like Zefta and Ruiz were able to do even more damage than Redemption, even though Redemption was playing the Ziggs, and that is honestly huge. And especially Zefta, like he tanked so much damage as well. This Jace needs to be banned away.
It absolutely does. That is a clean game. There's only one little tiny spot of blue advantage on the side of ViV, but after that it was just all Gamelord kind of smothering out ViV for a lot of that game. there was a lot of good stuff out from Gamelord. I feel like ViV just never got into the second game. Game 1, we saw them play very patiently around Gamelord and then wait, and when the competition finally got the lead it needed to, they could engage. I think some of that is the fact that Millip was targeted pretty heavily in this game. Like I think Millip was like 0-5 to end this, mostly out of the fact that
even.
you know, when you're playing a Gragas and you fall behind, you're quite squishy and you end up getting caught down. So maybe getting Millip back onto something like the Camille, something that has a little bit more potency when it comes to those side lanes. Maybe we'll find Millip a better setup in that game. Let's take a look at play of the game and see where this game went so right for Gamelord. There were a lot of early game fights it could be.
There were a lot of fights in it. I couldn't predict which one it's going to be. So it's the fight at 14 minutes, which I believe is just going to be a dominant fight for Gamelord.
Yeah.
As you can see, they caught out Sharky, and Tyrus wasn't even able to do anything in the backline because Heste knocked him up and then Zefta destroyed him. Right there, we can just basically see Gamelord, you know, constantly catching out champions from ViV Esports with the RE, and then Alistar defending Zefta, just like really doing what they have to do right there. Near again, Millip and Gradix have no chance to win against these two powerful champions on Zefta and Lonely Kid. Just amazing play from Gamelord right there.
Yeah, Gamelord showing up in the way that we wanted them to make sure that we had a competitive series, and that is what we have. We have a 1-on-1 series so far. ViV took game 1, Gamelord took game 2. That means one game remains between these two teams. One of them is going to go to the upper bracket finals. One of them will drop down to the lower bracket. Stick with us. We'll find out who it is in about 3.5 minutes time. Welcome back, everybody, to the WREC. We are heading into game number 3 between Gamelord and ViV Esports in our first semi-final of the day. I'm stress joined by Hells. That was a much cleaner game from Gamelord after a kind of disappointing game number 1. So as we go towards our draft for game 3, what do you think is the big takeaway that ViV need to stop Gamelord getting?
Well, the number 1 is going to be the Jace, and they're going to have to know that Heste is probably going to pick an engaging support, right? Because it worked incredibly well for them, and they have to know how to counter that kind of stuff. And honestly, also the Ziggs, right? The Ziggs has also been a major part of the team's winning, so they definitely have to draft around that. And like, those are probably going to be the main things. Obviously, the Rakan as well. And then it seemed like they put a lot of priority on the Corki. I haven't seen too much of it in EU because it's just getting banned out with these teams. But I just feel like they have to switch up their banning game a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to look at what Ziggs pick ban rate, or at least like win rate after this weekend is, because it's been pretty high. Let's take a check-in with Stuart for his key points heading towards our last game 3 of this series.
Thank you very much, Stress. Yes, we're going to go back to the draft again, and the draft around the Dura lane. You mentioned it briefly as well. We've had a lot of bans to the Dura lane and the support, so we've had a lot of high priority picks on the Ziggs and the Varus. So going into this third and final draft, there's still going to be a big priority on Corki ban away from Redemption, Vayne bans away from Kranix. And then as we went into game number 2, it was the early game advantages that kind of Gamelord got in that game. They had early game priority in mid and top lane. Garrus was able to push in against Gragas, and Ari is a really easy matchup against Garen, just to push the wave really easily. So able to rotate around the map, help Zefta get ahead on that Jace, get the double Scuttle Crab, and that worked really well in the first objectives. That just allowed them to extend their lead. And then the third point is just about guaranteed engages. In the first game, we saw Camille and Vi come out from ViV Esports, which has allowed them to easily jump onto the backline of Gamelord. In game 2, it was the opposite way around. It was Gamelord that had guaranteed engage, the Ari and the Alistar. I love to see Heste on Alistar, and I think that's going to be a big priority as well, getting Heste on them engaged supports and allowing him to roam around the map and make them plays. But we're going to game number 3. Let's see who's going to win it. Back to Stress and Hells.
Yeah, those engages for Heste look so much better than the Nami that we saw in game number 1. The Nami just kind of got denied all the time by Braum. And as we head into the third draft, I think there's some really valid points there. I think Ruiz's Ari was very strong. We saw a lot of priority on the Alistar coming from Heste. So I think Gamelord's adaptions in the second game were really good. And I wonder whether that means we'll see ViV swap over onto the red side this time around. Give them a little bit more flexibility, force Gamelord to kind of pick in a different cadence and maybe be a little less risky with some of their picks when it comes to like the Alistar. It paid off very well in game 2.
Yeah, definitely paid off very well. And it seems like they do not. They stick to the first pick. They just really, it seems like they really want to have that first pick. This is already the third game in a row. And I feel like Gamelord is obviously going to ban out the Camille, right? We know they're going to ban out the Camille. And yet again, we see a Corki ban. It's just ViV Esports banning out Corki every game. They just don't even want to see it. They just don't want to see it. And now Gamelord, Camille ban, of course. Like, it's totally obvious. But now how are they going to be playing around that Ziggs? Because we know Ziggs is also going to be important. And also the Jace. Is ViV Esports going to ban out the Jace? I feel like they have to. They actually go for the Rakan, which is obviously also a priority pick. We talked about it earlier, but these are just some big power picks being banned away. And it feels like target bans as well as just general power picks.
Yeah, the last ban was Galio, I believe it was, in the last game. That would leave, of course, Ziggs available. We saw the priority towards Fiora from ViV. They may drop that in this game. Gamelord had been banning the Vayne. I think we're probably going to see exactly the same thing happen again. I wonder whether ViV will go back to Fiora. I don't think the teams have been able to activate the Fiora well enough in this series. I think she's struggled to actually get gold and get into fights. Gamelord are going to stay the same. Makes sense. If you're ViV, do you pick the Ziggs here? Do you go all in and say, okay, the Ziggs is the most safe and most damage that we can pick here? Indeed. I think it makes total sense.
Exactly. Like, I was just gonna say, you cannot go for Fiora again because you're just gonna be up against the same composition, right? Like, especially that Jace, you really don't want to be dealing with the Jace when you're playing the Fiora. And right here, exactly, like ViV Esports is not trying to play some mind games or anything. They're like, okay, we picked the Ziggs, we don't care what you counter into it. Ziggs is powerful, and now we just have to build a strong composition around the Ziggs, as Stuart mentioned, with some solid engaging and some solid protection. As you can see, Gamelord does indeed pick the Jace, which makes a lot of sense because Zefta is an incredible Jace player. But now ViV Esports has a task. Pick a composition that can engage and pick a composition that can also equally as well protect the Ziggs.
Yeah, that's going to be... we'll see how the ViV can do it. They did it in game 1, importantly, and that is insanely high RE priority in this point of the game. But we saw just how much it gave Gamelord the ability to play actively on the map. So for Ruiz, we've seen the Garens, we've seen all these other mid laners, but Ruiz is like, I just need a traditional mid lane that can be an assassin, push out the lane, and take out one target. Because Ziggs, that's the way you can undo him, is if you can find him in the backline, take him out quickly, suddenly all that damage goes away. It's difficult to do though, and ViV are going right back to game number 1.
Exactly, and I feel like this may potentially be our first game where Fiora is not going to be picked nor banned. I really hope that's going to be. Like, I'm pretty tired of seeing Fiora's on here. Indeed, the Vi, I love seeing that. Because Tyrus did a phenomenal job in the first game with the Vi. Although Gamelord could potentially predict what Tyrus is going to be doing on the Vi, if he does the same thing as the first game, right? Which is full jungle clear and then going for a gank. So it may be like a little dangerous to pick the Vi right here. Like right here, it seems like ViV Esports is just desperately trying to put together the same composition as the first game, thinking that it will work against anything, really. And I feel that's a bit dangerous to think, because they're just picking these champions without really thinking about the consequences. And even though it worked in the first game, it doesn't mean that it's going to work against a different draft in the third game as well, Stress.
The Braum is going to buy a little bit of defensive capability for that Ziggs, a little extra time. As you said, that this time Gamelord have more damage threats. And with the Darius as well, that's, again, more damage on top of it. We're actually getting ViV from game 1 and Gamelord from game 2. This is like a very strange draft for us to actually have. Both teams are opting into what they just won with, and now we're going to have to see whether that continues the same trend. Gamelord, of course, have been looking in their bans a lot towards that bot lane already. It's going to likely be the Ziggs in bot lane. I wonder whether now we'll see some mid lane bans. Set's going to get banned away, so potentially towards that Baron lane as well, now that Darius has been picked up from Gamelord's side of things.
Yeah, and the thing is, Gamelord now has the opportunity to actually counter out the Braum, right? They haven't picked the Nami yet. They can now choose to, like, they can choose their picks into that Braum. And the question is, are they going to pick that Alistar again? Because I feel Alistar is a really solid champion right here, right? Because Alistar, there it is. They denied already. Like, Alistar would have been such a good pick here, because that would have been the engage that they need, and that would have been the counter that they need up against that competition against ViV Esports. But ViV Esports knew that as well, right? They banned it away. They don't want to deal with it. Leona not quite as good as doing what Alistar can do, so I feel that they are going to leave the Leona open. But indeed, banning away the Alistar, I like that from ViV Esports.
Gragas banned away just to try and get one of those safe laners out of the mix. Millip's Gragas was really heavily hit in the last game. Really didn't find a way into the game. I wonder what other supports ViV may look to take out. They also have bot lane champions. The likes of a Morgana may be taken away here. I don't know how much Redemption plays it as much, but when you look at the Black Shield onto a Darius, that kind of way that he runs into a fight, it's a very potent combination. And it's going to be the Senna. So Senna, I mean, long-range crowd control, long-range shielding, healing, some damage comes out. Maybe this is to block, like, farming, fasting Senna bot lanes where you can just take a tank in the bottom lane that's going to go aggressive. Because they've run out of tanks. Other than that Leona that you said, there aren't too many more tank supports that are available for Gamelord.
Yeah, and the thing about Senna is it does counter the Braum. Oh, they go for the Seraphine. Oh, they go for the Siren, and I don't like it. I don't like it.
No?
Because picking Seraphine into a Braum, you're taking a massive risk of just having your ultimate completely denied, and I don't like it. What am I supposed to say? I just don't like this pick from Gamelord right here.
That's fair. I mean, we'll see whether that's going to be a support Seraphine or whether it'll be with the Ashe that we saw Team Dark running, where Ashe kind of doesn't do the farming. But again, Braum blocks a lot of what Ashe wants to do as well. There's a little room there for Gamelord to kind of move it around. Akali picked up is going to now adjust the ViV composition from what it was in Game 1. Game 1, they ran Camille and Garen, and it meant that there was a big front line, but not a whole lot of kill threat on top of what Ziggs was doing. Well, now you've got an Akali to jump into the mix, and with their last pick, I'm sure that'll bring them some more frontline as well.
Yeah, and now they just have the opportunity to decide what to pick against the Seraphine, right? Like, they don't pick those melee champions that can just very easily get caught off by the Seraphine. Indeed, Akali. Seraphine is gonna have a very hard time catching out at Akali. Irelia as well, right? She can just constantly jump around. Again, I like this draft from ViV Esports. I like this draft. Even though Gamelord did so incredibly well in the second game, I just feel ViV Esports may have the advantage in this draft. And what is ViV Esports, or what is Gamelord going to pick as their last pick? I honestly have no idea because we don't know where any of the champions are going to be going. Maybe a traditional AD carry with a Seraphine support, but we don't know.
Could be Kai'Sa in that regard. We've seen some Kai'Sa. I mean, Varus is up available. It's going to be a double healing bot lane. Okay, so it's Seraphine carry with the Sona bot lane. I mean, they're basically the same champion. There was a long time in League of Legends where the PC version, they had overtuned healing, and it just means you do not die in that bottom lane. Like, we saw a lot of Sona Seraphine, a lot of Sona Lux, Seraphine Lux. I believe we may even have seen this meta in Wild Rift, although it would have been before my time of casting, unfortunately. So apologies to you historians out of there that have seen it in Wild Rift. I'm a little bit newer to this series, so it definitely has been seen in the meta, as you mentioned. So we're having a throwback to sustain bottom lane. How do we feel about this? You weren't sold on the Seraphine initially. How are you now sold on this?
I mean, I love it to see it because it's going to be very entertaining to watch how Gamelord plays it, but I don't know. I mean, sure, it works fine against Ziggs because you can constantly heal up, but against champions like the Irelia, like the Akali, like the Vi, who can just dive the backline and go on that Sona or go on that Seraphine, I feel it's quite a dangerous pick. And again, I want to see it work because I love these types of compositions. They scale really well into the late game. Sona's late game is really fun to watch, right? But is it gonna work as well? Now, that's the real question. I don't think so. I am personally gonna lean more towards ViV Esports, even though Gamelord showed absolute dominance in the second game. Like, I'm leaning more towards ViV Esports in this game.
Well, we'll see whether ViV can actually make it work. With Gamelord bringing us a bit of a blast from the past from last year's meta, we'll see whether it's enough to bring Gamelord through to the upper bracket finals, as Ruiz may very well have found Tyrus and Sharks putting damage down out of the jungle. Hester's here, although Sona at level 1 is not a very useful champion. Redemption's going to try and land the damage. I think Ruiz may have overextended here. That is going to get picked up, and that is devastating that it goes on to Sharks. Now Kranix is going to come up here and wait, Fleur is actually going to force a flash out of Redemption. This is going disastrously wrong for Gamelord to start things out, as Kranix can't quite convert the second kill. It's a good job that Redemption picks up the second one, but look at all the summoner spells used.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is what we expect, right? Like, even though you have an Ahri on Gamelord's side, your bot lane is just so incredibly weak in the early game, which is the Seraphine and the Sona. Even though they can win lane, they're not good in fights. So ViV Esports utilizing that massive early game power from Braum because of that passive, of course. Look at this. Look at this. Chat agrees. 58% goes for ViV Esports and 42% only goes for Gamelord. So even though Gamelord showed that massive advantage in the second game, even the chat thinks that this is not going to work for Gamelord.
We'll see whether chat are correct and how that plays out. Lonely Kid and Millip are going to trade again and again. We didn't talk about it yet, that it's the Akali in top lane and Irelia in mid lane. I mean, both of these assassins are really hard to deal with if they start getting rolling. And the fact that Irelia got that first kill is monstrous for ViV. Like, Irelia is going to be accelerated towards that first item. If they can get it completed before the first fights, that is some area that Gamelord have to avoid fighting in that early game.
Yeah, exactly. Here we can just see Hester desperately trying to do anything. He actually nearly stole this Rift Cutter. I just want to say he actually nearly stole it. But right here as well, like, Ruiz up against Sharks, Ahri is actually really good into Irelia. So the lane matchup, he is going to have some sort of an advantage. And yeah, right here we can see again, like, they're
that
actually
stun.
a nice engage.
That stun floor was behind Tyrus, so actually forced the engage out of there, or at least I should say forced the escape. That was Gamelord trying to utilize that mid lane push against the Irelia and then cut into the bottom lane. They couldn't quite get it, though, as Gamelord struggling to at least catch on to ViV in this early game. Oh, there's an apprehend. There's one catch, but Millip's going to be able to get out just fine.
Millip is actually losing this lane against Lonely Kid, and that's especially also because of Lonely Kid using a fleet footwork. When you play against an Akali as a Darius, and never mind, when you play as a Darius into an Akali, you always want to run fleet footwork, and as you can see, Lonely Kid is just maintaining a lot of health, but he's getting ganked.
Yeah, here comes Tyrus, is farmed up to that ultimate. Lonely Kid was trying to get the apprehend, hoping it was in tower range, couldn't quite get it. Lonely Kid falls.
Yet again, Tyrus doing what he's best at, farming the jungle, getting those early ganks, and as I said, like, the game is starting to look pretty good for ViV Esports. But now the real question arises, right? Which team wins the late game? Because both teams have an incredible late game, and even though ViV Esports has a Ziggs, I kind of feel like if we get to the really, really late game, that the Seraphine Sona composition may win, even though ViV Esports has the Ziggs.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things is between Sona and Seraphine, you give so much shielding and healing through that, like, you basically absorb the Ziggs ult, right? Is like you just stand in one group and you're like, okay, I'll just shield them up as soon as I see the Ziggs animation. And then suddenly we turn the damage back on. It also kind of depends a little bit on the Drakes. I mean, if Gamelord can get like an Ocean Drake or a Mountain Drake and just eat the damage up front and then just heal it back up without getting killed by Akali and Aurelia, I don't know that there's a way that Viv can win those late game team fights.
Exactly. Like, even though Ziggs deals so much damage, is it gonna be enough? Now, that's the real question. Honestly, I cannot give an answer to that because I haven't seen Sona Seraphine for such a long time. We saw it in Wild Rift, like, I believe, like months ago, maybe even like a year ago, just a very long time ago, but not anymore. It has kind of gone out of meta. So that's why I said I love to see it, but I don't think it's gonna work. But it doesn't mean that I don't want it to work. I really want to see it work because I want to see how strong it can get, that combination, especially in the late game.
I think one thing that teams have gotten better at doing, at least in general over time, is like understanding when you need to buy healing reductions. And I would not be surprised to see Kranix pick up an Oblivion Orb very early on. Flower trying to take the dragon as there were 4 people from Gamelord there. It's going to be a handshake on the objectives. Rift Herald's going to go with Tyrus towards that top lane. We'll see whether he drops it immediately. He actually does, just right away. It's like, we're going to take that apprehend over the wall. Tyrus is going to get punished. It's going to be enough of the bleed to take him down, and Lonely Kid picks up the kill. Doesn't get the reset on the ultimate, so we'll be in a tougher fight against Mill up under this tower. Tower still stands, though, as they were trying to get things back, and running his floor has brought Kranix into the fight. Ruiz flashes forward to get the damage down. Hester's going to try and float his way towards the kill and does get it. That's a huge pickup as Zefta has found his way up the river. It's a Rift Herald play for top tower, but Gamelord pick up a bunch of kills in the top lane.
And this is why you ban out Jace when you're up against Zefta. He knows what he's doing on that Jace and just quickly got that double kill right there. ViV Esports actually had quite a big lead when they got that turret, because as we look into this replay, this was just beautiful from Lonely Kid, by the way, because this basically, like, this was the start of Gamelord actually making it out of this. Like, they were behind 1.5k gold, by the way, right after they lost the turret. But then they came back because they got those kills. And that all started with Lonely Kid hooking Tyrus over that wall. Beautiful, beautiful apprehend from him coming through on that Darius. Just like, well, what am I supposed to say? Amazing. And here we see Zefta, boom, engaging, getting that double kill as well. This all started with Lonely Kid using his apprehend to get Tyrus over that wall.
And it's hard to know because obviously when we have the observer feed like this, we have full vision. But from the ward placement, it looked like it may even have been blind from Lonely Kid. I mean, obviously he knew that Tyrus was there because he saw the Eye of the Herald get dropped and he'd seen him at least a second or two before. There's a possibility it was totally blind as Tyrus is going to have to vault break his way out away from Ruiz. Charm's already been used, so can't quite find a target. But you can see Gamelord, they are very much looking for a fight. And while Hester's not on like the traditional engage support, Crescendo from Hester plus the Redemption ultimate, the Seraphine ultimate, is going to do a lot of work starting a fight and keeping Viv exactly where Gamelord want them to be.
Definitely, and I'm going to be expecting Mercury's threats, but we have a fight right here in the bot lane.
Yeah, Ruiz trying to use the tower to his advantage. Ignite ticking is going to get the kill for Shargs, and now Shargs will get picked off on the back end of this fight. They give the kill over to Zefta. I think that's exactly who needed it because the damage is going to come from this Jace the later on in this game.
Definitely, and we already see an Infinity Orb, I believe that's what the item is called, sorry. The anti-heal item come through from Kranix, which is exactly what he needs.
Oh, brilliant block from Floor. I think he even shielded that Crescendo. There was like half a second of Hester's ultimate starting. That's the one good thing about Braum here. Yeah, I can see with that, healing reduction already come through from that Oblivion Orb. At least that's what I'm calling it. I'm pretty sure
Oblivion
it's the same.
Orb,
but,
yes.
Yeah, and cutting through some of that healing already. And Floor can do work against the ultimates coming from Redemption and Hester. Like, they both count as projectiles. So Braum is just going to put that shield up and be like, no ults from you.
Yeah, exactly. Fleur already doing an amazing job. And like, he's basically the one that can win the game for ViV Esports.
Yeah, if his shield's on time, Ruiz. They've swapped sides, and now Zefta's going to try and deal with Millup to pick up the kill. That's a rampage. This Jace, exactly as you said, is working exactly how Zefta needs it to.
Yeah, and this is going to be very problematic for ViV Esports because, like, if we look at the composition of Gamelord, we've only really talked about the Sona, Seraphine, Ari, right? But we've not talked about the Jace, which is right now the biggest problem for ViV Esports. And I feel like ViV Esports just doesn't know how to deal with it. And that's why I said it was a huge mistake for them to not decide to ban it out. But what I was going to say is everyone in ViV Esports is going to get Mercury threats. And as we can see, I believe there were already like 3 or 4 Mercury threats. If we actually look into this replay, Milup went for the dive. He used his second ability a little bit too early, which didn't allow him to use it here anymore. And here he just gets caught off by Zefta, but there is another fight.
Speaking of getting caught, Redemption now caught. Charm goes on to a Vi who's ulting. That's not going to do too much as Ruiz desperately trying to get himself away. Crescendo will lock 2 in place and buy enough time for Ruiz to get out. That Irelia ultimate did not lock people down either. And while they're walking over a shroud, Gamelord do have to be careful, but the sustain on the back end is going to be enough as Lonely Kid around the wall tries to get more done. Gamelord have got this dragon already low, and that's the Infernal Drake going. 2 dragons already down in favor of Gamelord, and the third one is going to be Mountain. That leaves us with an Ocean Soul, and if Gamelord can get all of the dragons in this game, they are going to be insanely hard to shut out of the fight.
Definitely, and Gamelord seems to be getting to the late game.
Lonely Kid still has his ult. I don't know that you want this, Milup.
Exactly. Only Kid still has his ult. He would have defended it, but they got the turret. They got what they wanted. And the only thing that ViV Esports is getting right now is the turrets. They got a Baron lane turret and a Dragon lane turret. Sure, they lost every single other objective, but they do have the 2 turrets, which can provide a good advantage. Although Gamelord has saved the most important one, which is the mid lane turret, right? That's the turret that we constantly talk about. That's the one that you want to keep alive, and that's the one that Gamelord has been keeping alive.
Yeah, although this is kind of like, in a way, a flashback to game 1. ViV are ahead. They have this composition that if they find a single target, they can lock Gamelord out of the fight. However, I think this time there's more damage threats. If Gamelord can get... that damage. If Gamelord can get Rift Herald to work on mid lane tower, it's still full health, so they need a push on with it as well. That's how they can break through. They're going to make the play now, as they've seen Milup in the bottom lane. They know Vice towards top lane, and that's a great charm onto Fleur. Is going to push him out, and Ruiz does run into one member of ViV. Tyrus is going to be able to back away. 100 health on that mid tower. Gamelord can crack it, and now the healing comes through from Gamelord, but in from the side, Milup is going to be able to pick up one as Zefta is going to find 2. It's Tyrus down, and now Kranix is in trouble as Kranix on such low health into the cannon form, and Milup dies after getting a triple kill. He did everything he could, but I think the mid lane tower plus Zefta picking up the kills is going to counterbalance the fact that 4 members of Gamelord just died.
It is going to counterbalance the fact, but if we look into this replay, there's so much to talk about. First of all, this was a good Rift Herald. This is when you put down the Rift Herald. Gamelord made a mistake in the second game, but in this game, this is what you want to do. And look at this as well. Heste and Redemption being able to keep Ruiz alive, but then it's Sharks diving in the backline with the Irelia. And this is the problem that you have, right? You cannot deal with assassins like Irelia and the Akali. Milup and Sharks diving the backline, killing all 3, and Milup runs away. So this seems to be the win condition for ViV Esports right there. If they are able to, first of all, keep the Ziggs alive, and then secondly, dive themselves as well. And they have the composition for that because they do have the Braum. Then ViV Esports could still take this game stress.
Oh, Zefta is so rich. Like, he's got so much gold in this game. The closest to him is basically Milup and Sharks, who they have threat. We just saw in that fight, like Milup, you mentioned it, getting into the backline, dealing the damage. But when Zefta's still alive, you've got to get this primary carry out of the game. He is so strong. Ziggs ultimate's going to be used to push through that bottom lane, or at least I should say defend the push through bottom lane from Gamelord. But now they have another wave of minions they're going to try and push through. And when Zefta's in front of a tower with the hypercharge, ability 2 on Jace does a lot of work. Redemption's in threat in the middle lane, is trying to get under the tower, is going to try and heal himself up. Can't though, because there's an ignite ticking. That's also healing reduction that we didn't bring on in this exchange. Milup doesn't have an Oblivion Orb yet, but if he does get it, that's going to make those kills even easier, as Heste's going to try and run down Gamelord, try and settle themselves mid lane again. There's only 2 members here, Zefta and Heste. 3 members. Here comes the Assault and Battery, and that's Heste in trouble. They're going to be left for dead. It does stasis. I don't even know whether that was worth it at this point, as that's dominating Milup.
Sharks died in the Baron lane, unfortunately. I don't think that was the right thing to do. If Sharks had just stayed alive, then they would have had 5 people up against 4. Seraphim, Redemption on the Seraphim wasted his ultimate as well, by the way. So this would have been a good opportunity for ViV Esports to go for the Dragon. But unfortunately, Sharks fell by being in the Baron lane at the wrong moment. So right now, I don't think ViV Esports can take this Dragon anymore. As you can see here, right there, Milop just catching out Redemption. And even though he missed his third ability, he just kills him pretty easily. Anyways, he didn't even have to use the second charge of his ultimate. Right here, ViV Esports is actually going for the Dragon.
Yeah, they're going to go for it. Sharks is not close enough, but neither is Hester. There's some of that team fighting and sustain that will not be available for this fight. Ruiz is forced to flash back away over the wall, and Lonely Kid is right in the middle of it all. Does try and get the Decimate onto multiple people, and look at how low Tyrus is. The jungler has fallen. That's now going to open the window for Zefter to come in and steal this Dragon away. The smite is there, the double kill for Zefter as well, and it's 3 members of ViV dead. They're moving their way towards that Baron. All 5 members are going to sustain up very quickly from Gamelord with these 2 supports, and they're going to be able to take the Baron. I think that's the fight that's going to break this game in favor of Gamelord even stronger.
Yeah, and for some reason, ViV Esports went for a 4 versus 5 engage, missing out a key champion in their champion, which is Sharks. As we can see, Sharks full HP with his ultimate, but they didn't even wait for him.
Really great understanding of Gamelord from what they needed to do here. They knew if mid tower falls, is even harder for, or at least if mid tower stays, it's harder even for ViV to come back into this game. Hester,
He fat fingered it.
Well, that means he fat fingered both his flash and his crescendo. So I don't know.
Okay, never mind that, actually.
I think Hester maybe thought that that's where Sharks was. I'm not going to make excuses from him. That's a big teamfight tool that is no longer available for Gamelord. But they took the Baron. They've got a lot of strength right now to push this game through.
Yeah, but I like, if we look at this replay, look at Sharks. He's the Aurelia. He's waiting right there. And ViV Esports is just doing a full fight while missing a champion. And on the opposite side, Gamelord is only missing the Sona, which is not as much, but it bought enough time for Lonely Kid on the Darius to get out his ultimate, because there was no Aurelia to deal damage to him. And right here, if Darius has 70% HP and restarted his ultimate, you know the team fight is over, Stress.
Yeah, at that point, there's no real way of fighting back. Milip has tried to push out bot lane, but that leaves the team a little bit unprotected in the top side. They don't have the threat for the kills, and they don't have the health bars left anymore. Redemption is going to heal the rest of his team up all the way through. This is Gamelord. Hester, these crescendos have not exactly been what you're looking for, but it doesn't matter. Gamelord, they're in such a commanding position. They have got the full stack pushing through top lane, and they are going to be able to push it down with this wave. Super minions, Baroned up when they eventually get there, will be pushing into the base. It's not going to be enough though, as Milip tries to go aggressive. So does Sharks. They tried to do it with the Akali and the Aurelia, but Gamelord bounced back from a game 1 loss into a 2-1 win over ViV Esports. Gamelord, the first team making it to the upper bracket finals.
Don't give Zefta Jace, all right? Let that be a lesson. Put it in your heads. I'm talking to you teams out there. You know, I'm talking to all of the teams. Do not give him Jace. No matter the circumstance, if you give Jace to him, he just hard carries the game. And if you look into some of these replays, Lonely Kid as well, looking surprisingly good on the Darius. He was a big part of the reason why they won this game. And honestly, the entire team of Gamelord did really well. Although we saw some bad ultimates from Sona, from Heste, but it's fine. He compensated for it in the second game. He played that Alistar in the second game. He still did an amazing job.
Heste's like, how does this champion work? What do I do with this? Do I just flash in? Is this it? Honestly, like the situation they were in at the end, I mean, it really didn't have that much to say on the game, especially when, as you said, Lonely Kid was doing so much with Zefta in these fights, playing the Jace exactly how he needed to. And, you know, we saw this fight in mid lane where we thought perhaps the Akali has done enough damage from ViV, but it's the mid lane tower going down, Zefta taking everybody out in the back line, holds the game in Gamelord's favor heavily, and then allows them to take a dragon, take the Baron, and really punish ViV for starting the dragon when they shouldn't have been able to.
Yeah, and there was potential for ViV to win, and that was catching out the enemies, right? They had the composition for it, and they did actually. They caught out enemies multiple times, but then they took this losing fight. They went for a fight without Sharks, who is the Aurelia, which is a very important champion in their composition. They gave Lonely Kid all of his stacks, and of course the team fight was over. And we saw the late game power of having that Sona Seraphim, by the way, because look at this fight, by the way. They have so many barriers. They have so much healing, like constant barriers and healing, while dealing so much damage from Zefta on that Jace. Just like it worked out. The composition from Gamelord worked out, Stress.
It really did. We had our reservations a little bit since, Sona Seraphine has been out of the meta for a little while. We saw it last year. Stuart was giving me the heads up during the drafting in the game that of course it is a previous meta, but honestly, we're talking about recent meta. We're talking about Jace. We're talking about the shock blasts ripping through people. 8-0-6 in this game for Zefta. And although Ruiz wasn't getting the kills this game, his Ahri gives Gamelord such a solid mid lane presence that it's so hard for enemies to play around this pick champion.
Yeah, I mean, Zefta didn't even give a shutdown to the enemy. It's going 8-0. Look at how much damage he did as well. Like, on the Jace, doing the most damage, tanking the most damage, and not even dying a single time. Absolute perfect gameplay from Zefta. And that's why we talk about him constantly, right? This is one of the best junglers in Europe, and just constantly proving that he can do this. He can just hard carry the game. And as you can see, Gamelord was not even that, like, they were not even ahead in this game. There were some points that they got ahead a little bit, but it was very equal. It was only in that very late game when they got some nice teamfights, when they pushed that mid lane tower with the Rift Herald, that's when they really got that massive advantage and how they won the game.
Yeah, really back and forth game from a back and forth series. And I mean, in Europe, we have such good junglers. Like we have Vex, we have Zefta, SC7's in the mix, Andre is still there, and I feel like I'm going to be forgetting people, so I'm sorry if I've forgotten your name. We just have so many good junglers that I cannot wait to see how our junglers match up on the world stage. Let's take a look at our player of the game. I'm pretty sure it's going to feature Zefta pretty heavily, as his Jace just destroyed ViV in Game 3.
Yeah, definitely. So while we take a look at it, it is a dragon fight right there. It's indeed the last fight where Sharks was missing. And if we look at Redemption, his ultimate did get blocked by Fluor, by the way. So Fluor did his job as a Braum, but then Lonely Kid. Have your eyes on Lonely Kid right there. He's able to get his stacks. He's able to get that passive enabled from Darius, and right then and there, the fight is won. Because Hestay constantly healing up Lonely Kid, and same goes for Redemption, basically just playing their composition truly to their powers. Because Lonely Kid got his passive, and he was constantly getting healed up.
Yeah, Gamelord, I think, looks so much better when they have multiple threats that can actually carry. Even though, it's very similar. We see Zefta doing a lot of the work in this game, and we've seen Redemption carry a lot of the work in other games. When they were in Game 1, only really having the Orianna as a threat, I feel like they looked a little bit like off their game as such. So I think this is a much better look for Gamelord. It's when we've seen them be the most successful. We have to crown an MVP of this series. I think there's no surprises from this one. 2 games, really strong performances from Zefta on this Jace jump.
Yeah, exactly. It's obviously Jace, right? It's just, I mean, look at him. He constantly enabled them to make those plays, just really playing the Jace perfectly. And like, I'm just excited to see more of Zefta. And I mean, obviously Jace is going to get banned in future matches, but he can play everything else as well, right? We've seen his Lee Sin as well. We've seen some other champions. Just this guy can play everything. This guy has Gamelord on his back. Like, he's the jungler that you need to enable the amazing players that Gamelord has. He's the jungler that you need to get ahead in the game, and then the rest carries the game. But he does the carrying himself as well. So he kind of takes all of the credit. Not sure if that, I mean, it works out for them. Zefta, just such an amazing player.
Yeah, yes. It's a different play style from that Game 1. I think the Gragas didn't look quite as clean. It doesn't matter though, because Zefta just did enough work in the second games. I think an honorable mention probably goes to Hester. When it comes to like Game 1 on the Nami, it felt like Gamelord weren't pushing forward, weren't being aggressive at any point. Then as soon as Hester goes, okay, let's to play the Alistair, we'll play the Sona. I think the support was a little bit less necessary in that third game. I think honorable mention there, Gamelord looked back to their full strength in game number 2. And a very interesting set of drafts. I want to hear a little bit about that return to an older meta as we hear from Redemption, the bot lane carry from Gamelord, who's sitting with Stuart for an interview.
Thank you very much, Stress. I'm indeed joined by Redemption. Redemption, what a crazy series overall. How does you and the team feel after that victory?
We feel very good, obviously, and thank you for having me.
Awesome stuff. Obviously, as yourself, the Seraphine Sona bot lane as well, bringing back a bit of an old meta that we saw from last year. Is that something you have planned going into the draft, or was it like, it's like the perfect moment for you to choose it?
We actually thought pre-draft on game 3 that Seraphine Sona was an option, but on R3 we went for something that we didn't want it to initially, and then we were like, okay, just go Seraphine Sona, and yeah, it was prepared, and it worked.
Yeah, it worked out in the end for you after a very, very close series. Obviously, next up as well, REC.GG against Formulation. You'll be facing the winner. Who do you think is going to win in that matchup?
I think REC will take the win.
Awesome. So potentially the two titans and the two big ones in the finals. And if it is REC, who do you think is gonna come out on top? Do you think you can take down REC?
I think we can take down REC. Obviously, we are not playing to our top level. We are actually in a slope right now, and we are doing the best we can to come back from that slope. But
I mean, hopefully you get to play your AP majors that you love, and hopefully you bring back your Corki as well. Redemption, thank you very much for joining me on the broadcast. Good luck as well in the next round in the upper bracket final. Hopefully we get to speak to you again soon.
Thank you.
I feel like it's me versus the world on this Formulation REC matchup. Everybody's saying REC. However, when I casted them in January, I came in being like, REC are going to win. And then they got demolished. So there's still an opportunity. We're going to have to let it all play out on the Rift in our next series. It is our second semi-final. Some crazy Wild Rift action today. We'll be back in a few minutes for REC versus Formulation. We're going to find out who will be facing Gamelord in the next round. Stay with us. We will be right back.